Welcome, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the Town of Superior Board of Trustees meeting for April 13th, 2009. And Phyllis, if you'd call the roll.
Sure. Mayor Andrew Muckle.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lisa Skumas.
Here.
Trustees Joe Sorelli.
Here.
Dana D'Souza.
Here.
Elia Gagoras.
Here.
Eric Rosenfeld.
Present.
Deborah Williams.
Here.
Town Manager Scott Randall.
Here.
Town Attorney Kendra Carberry.
Here.
Town Clerk Phyllis Hurton here.
Thank you. With that, item number 3, approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda? Yes. Trustee D'Souza.
I wanted to pull. Let me get my right one out. I wanted to pull consent agenda item 6E, and I think that's it, actually.
Okay. Any other changes to tonight's agenda? Trustee Sorelli.
I have a very minor comment about 6D, so I don't think I need to pull it, but I'd like to have the opportunity to make a comment about it at some point. Is that...
Would it require any changes?
Yeah, it probably would require a...
Why don't we...
I'll pull it.
Yeah. Okay.
If I'm right, it will require a minor change.
Okay. Trustee Skumas, did I see the pen? Was it 6D? Trustee Skumas.
I move the consent agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry, if there were any changes. Okay. Any other changes to tonight's agenda?
I do have some questions on G, but it would not change anything, including J as well. So if it's not going to change anything, can I just ask the questions, or do I need to pull it?
If it's always probably best. Yeah. So,
Okie dokie.
G and J.
G and J.
G and J.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other changes with that, Trustee Skumas?
I move the consent agenda as amended.
Okay. Motion by Trustee Skumas, second by Trustee D'Souza. Further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Item number 4, public comment on consent agenda and non-agenda items. And if anybody is commenting about the other issues that have been pulled, they will follow the consent agenda. So, with that.
Gladys 4G404 South 3rd Avenue. I have a couple questions and a comment. So 6E is the preliminary approval, amending Chapter 7. So if I have any comments or questions, now is the time, because I read this that April 27th, I think it is the final reading.
6E has been pulled to follow the consent agenda.
Okay. 6E?
Yes.
So can I make any comments on it now? Or does it need to be discussed later?
On 6E?
Uh-huh.
My understanding is that that's been pulled, right? If I have that. So that'll be after the consent agenda.
Okay.
Yes.
Just want to get that clear.
Yep.
Okay. I just want to know on the land use code that is being discussed. It was discussed at the Planning Commission meeting the other night, and I didn't get to go to that meeting because of another meeting. So, will it be discussed again at the Planning Commission meeting, or was that it last week? Do I need to wait until it comes before you to make my comments? When can public comment on it?
So in general, during any public meeting that involves that issue, but I have no idea where the Planning Commission is.
The Planning Commission's schedule, I believe, called for them to be reviewing Chapter 16 over their next 3 meetings at least. They only got through the first 26 pages at the first meeting last Tuesday night. So depending on the rest of their workload, it may be optimistic that they can get through in 2 more meetings.
Sounds like there's more opportunity at the Planning Commission.
And are they meeting twice a month now then with that?
Yes.
Scenario?
Okay.
I'll be prepared next time. Okay, then the other question I have is you're going through and reviewing all these chapters in the code and everything, and that's fine. I think it's great that that's finally being done. What my question is, should the Planning Commission be reviewing those also? I'm just asking to be educated. I don't know.
Their jurisdiction basically is land use, so it's primarily the land use code is what they deal with. So I don't think they would have much to any relevance to other parts. Maybe there's, generally speaking, no, that's not what they do.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Additional public comment?
Sandy Pennington, 3002 Micah Court. I understood from Mr. Randall that you were going to announce the status of the Richmond development tonight at tonight's meeting, and so I'm inquiring as to when you plan to make that announcement.
Okay. Mr. Randall, do you want to give us an update of where we are?
Sure. We did receive word from Richmond late on Wednesday, which was communicated to the board, that they had made the decision not to submit an application in accordance with the agreements that were entered into between the town, Richmond, and Boulder Valley School District back in January. I have followed that up with inquiries as to, one, what their motivations or reluctances were after having spent so much time on that process, as well as, was it a matter of timing, was it market, was it perception about community reaction or board support for it. I've gotten no response to any of those follow-up inquiries. So I have nothing more to tell you other than the deadline for the 90 days is this coming Wednesday. They indicated last Wednesday that they had not intended to make an application. If and when an application were to come in, as I communicated to many people asking about why isn't this on the agenda tonight, any development application would immediately be referred to the Planning Commission, at which time the Planning Commission would conduct its requisite public hearing, render its recommendations to the board would schedule a public hearing, and make its ultimate decisions. So.
But for the take-home message about the people that were interested in the last discussion regarding the land swap was that this is, for all intents and purposes...
Unless something happened in the next 2 days, correct?
Not happening.
According to my count, the 90 days expired Sunday. Is that different from your count, Scott?
Yes.
Either way, Richmond has indicated that they're not coming forward, so...
Well, I was actually in a meeting with you, Scott, told April 13th is the expiration of the 90 days.
The agreement referenced days. The agreement was approved by the board on January 13th, if memory serves me correct.
January 12th.
Probably won't be the first time I'm wrong tonight.
I think it's moot at the moment, but...
And if they submit, we'll count the days.
Well, but when the town manager says April 13th to a constituent, I mean, it's fairly important that we stick by that date. So perhaps it's moot for this, but it certainly doesn't make me feel any better. Then the question goes to the two amendments that were approved on January 12th. My understanding is if we do not receive a proposal by Richmond within 90 days, those amendments expire. They cease to exist. They're off the books. Is that understanding correct?
I'd have
I'm not sure what amendments.
I'm not
you're
sure what
referring to.
amendments you're referencing. If you're talking about the agreements between the parties.
The intergovernmental agreement between the town, between Richmond and BVSD, and then the agreement between town and Richmond. They're all detailed in your item number 9 from January 12th, but they're contingent. There are two contingencies, the 90-day submission and the 180-day approval. And likewise, I was told by Mr. Randall that if either of those contingencies fail to be met, those amendments expire. And that's very important because I just heard him say tonight that development plans can be submitted in the future. My understanding is no, they cannot be, because the amendments that enable them to be put forth terminated as of the 90 days. So consequently, new amendments would have to be submitted. So this is an important element of process here.
Yes, so your understanding is correct. If the school district isn't getting $400,000, they're not going to enter into an IGA with the town, and so once again, all those things will fall apart. So that's, your understanding is correct.
Okay, thank you. Then I would ask if, in fact, this is the case, and again, I'm speaking of past because I thought this terminated April 12th, went to April 13th because it's the first business day after the 12th. So I would put forth to the board what is the board's intent re the El Dorado K-8 acreage.
there's no intent right now. It will not revert because nothing has happened, so it's going to be in the same status that it is right now, governed by the same intergovernmental agreements that we have with the school district.
My understanding is that the board, that the town of Superior was the driver, was the initiator of the discussions regarding what got us here. And so my question to the board and to Mr. Randall would be, do you intend to be the driver in the future soliciting a residential development bid on that property?
There's been no discussion about that.
Okay. And then the third thing is I would go to ask the question, if this came in on, received late on Wednesday, I guess that you might have answered that in the discrepancy over the April 13th, but in my understanding, this definitively should have been on the agenda. The agenda was issued Friday. The discussion was had late Wednesday. So the fact that this was going to be discussed at tonight's meeting should have been on tonight's agenda. With that, I yield the floor. Thank
Okay.
you.
I'm not sure updates need to be listed on the agenda, but
I'm George Kuffner, 7520 West Coal Creek Drive, Superior. Our last snowstorm, I don't know if any of you people have seen it, but I sure did, that our town staff trucks were out policing the dog tails off of the big snow contractors' trucks, also helping them clean intersections. In the previous years, that was never done. It's a lot of wear and tear on our town vehicles for somebody that we're paying to do that job anyway. They're kind of letting the ball fall on that. Our trucks shouldn't be used for that. Maybe a parking lot is one thing, but policing behind the big guys, we didn't sign up for that. That ain't what they're getting paid for. And I don't know if any of you guys seen it, but I sure did. That and that they learn how to tell time to get here a little quicker would help. Thank you.
thank you.
Steve Smith, 653 Eaton Circle. I want to talk on the public record about the mootness of points with this board. This board talks about an issue being moot, but they had an election or a vote a while back about a trash issue. It didn't pass. The point was moot. They brought it up at the next meeting and passed it. They've done this with the storage facility in this town. They continue to have elections when one official doesn't vote the way other officials don't want. We see some pretty interesting things happen in the next meeting that passes those issues. So as a warning to my fellow neighbors in our neighborhood, when you hear from this board that a point is moot, don't buy it, because they don't let things drop till they get their way. And if you want proof in the pudding, look at the history of the vote record of this town. You want another example of it? I was at this board meeting about the banners for the HOA. In my hands are the stipulations that Scott's going to present to this board tonight. I was told that it was not an issue. And here are stipulations that make it an issue. Okay? Right here it says in black and white, you can have 4 of those. Nothing was said about that in the last meeting.
Yep. So if you're talking about item number 8, if
Yep.
just procedurally, if we could talk about that during item number 8, that would
So,
be.
you know what, I'm not going to stay, because I know where the way things head here. It gets a direction. You guys get input from the town manager. And if it doesn't go the way that he wants it, it comes back up again until you vote the way he wants it. And if you don't believe it, look at the track record of this town. It speaks for itself. So anybody that is watching this tonight, anybody in this room that is hearing this, be fully aware when you're told that an issue is moot in this town, it is not. It will come back again and again until it's passed. Lisa's aware of this, and so is Dana. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to, since my name was just pointed out, we actually haven't voted on that yet, and I actually was very concerned that the HOA get fair representation, and I'm really sorry that you have taken it upon, no, this is my comment, you had your comment. So I just want to remind you that we haven't voted on this yet. This has not been passed, what you're seeing in that packet, so please keep that in mind.
It doesn't matter anymore.
Lisa, did you have a comment?
I did, and I just wanted to say that I don't, the agenda is made up of things that come forward from the town manager, but also from the board, and some things are, they go back and forth. It's not something that I don't feel like it's something that the town manager keeps putting it for us until we vote his way. So I would disagree with you on that one.
Could you
So.
speak on the trash issue then, and why 1 week it was not passed and the following meeting it was?
I was commenting specifically on the issue of criticizing about that issue, that
History speaks for itself.
personality issue.
Okay. Additional public comment.
Bob McCool, 312 West Coal Creek Drive. Take a deep breath. I'm going to lighten things up a lot here. I want to talk about backyard chickens, which I've talked to one or two of you about. Definitely not of the high value discussions we're having about property, but certainly fun and interesting. We have an interest in this, allowing backyard chickens in Superior, which really would equate to Original Town and Sagamore, probably those areas that are not controlled by NHOA. Not sure what the process is. It was suggested that I come and talk to you. I can also bring it up to the Planning Commission. My interest in talking about it now is that it's early in the spring. If we're going to do it this year, now's the time we have to talk about it. So we have a number of places, a number of cities in Colorado that actually allow or have recently allowed this. We have the Boulder, Denver, Fort Collins, Longmont, and Loveland that currently allow backyard chickens. We have larger cities, Portland, Maine, South Portland, Oregon, lots of towns around the country. I mean, it's just growing in popularity to have backyard chickens. It's fairly easy to do. I think there's a lot of examples of land use that can be looked at if I can get you guys interested in maybe amending our land use to allow this. I think it provides tremendous benefit, organic eggs, compost, weed control, and it's fun. As far as complaints go, everything I'm reading, they just don't exist. They're very, very few. Anybody who maintains chickens, and obviously land use has to cover that, maintenance, smell, size, noise, and all those types of things. Research I'm doing, the complaints are minimal. Anybody who takes care of chickens, they're just pleasant things to have around. And wanted to ask the board to consider this, and if you can, tell me what the process would be to actually get this on the agenda and see if we can get it dealt with.
So you're not talking open range chickens?
Nope. We're talking, so typical things are, no roosters, obviously. It's not a good thing. Nobody'd be happy about that. And there's some space requirements. It's, 4 to 10 chickens are what, the maximum are in most of these towns. You can't slaughter chickens. I mean, they're there for eggs. That's the only purpose, right? You got to keep things clean and all that good stuff. So and it's much more interesting and fun than all of our other topics. So,
My understanding of how that process would occur, which is there's actually a nexus to this evening's meeting, would be to amend 16 and on the limit of household pets.
Chapter 7,
Yes.
page
Yeah.
102.
yeah.
7 to 80.
Yeah. And I know that area that obviously we're in the middle of reviewing that land use. But there's a bit more to it because obviously
Yeah.
I don't think just making it a household pet would be appropriate. That would not really work well. But
Get their little doors.
yeah, and if that's something the planning, and we've talked about it offline at the planning commission.
Yep.
But again, moving in a little more quickly. So if we want to do it this year, if we can get it through this year,
There is
that'd be great. I'd love
there
it.
is a demand on household chickens because I've had like 4 emails about this. So,
No, I have
Yeah.
had to.
Yeah. Great.
Did you get anything from a fellow named Purdue? Or
Sure.
I think it's a phenomenal idea, so I'd like to see the town support it.
So I don't know what the next step is, but
send us information. How about that? If you have
I'd be happy to
information,
do
it
that.
sounds like you've been doing a
I have
research
been doing
project
some research,
and
little research
send it to the board.
project. It's been fun.
Is there sample language from somewhere else? for
There
instance?
is, yeah. I could send that to you. as
That
well.
would be helpful.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Start with his preferred.
Suzanne Sawyer Rattler, 405 South 3rd Avenue. Hello.
Hello.
So I didn't know Bob was going to talk about chickens tonight, but as long as he talked about chickens and just sort of were thinking along those terms, I added a quick little comment here that I want to say. yeah, when I first moved to original town Superior, lots of people had chickens, and chickens are kind of nice, you know, and so I vote for chickens. And but I also want to make a comment while we're doing the animal look ahead that I know that there are some communities who have regulations about pit bulls and dogs that are somewhat dangerous. And I just, not to name names, but I would just say I would prefer chickens as my neighbors to the pit bull that seems to be my neighbor. So I just want to throw that out. If you haven't given any thought about pit bulls, it's certainly changed the way I function in my whole yard. And so just throwing it out, not here as a complaint, but just throwing it out to put it in your thinking. Related to that kind of thinking with chickens, I just want to kind of say I don't know where it ever went or whatever happened, but I'm so sorry that we're not doing a community garden thing, which was really sounding solid on that 9 acres. And I think that's sometimes something that's hard with town government. When you're here, you think you've got your community gardens, and then you go away and you don't. So I don't know if we have any community gardens.
That's being looked at by ProStack right now.
Yeah? Great. Oh, thank you, Joe.
Where it goes, I don't know yet, but it's...
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad to hear that. I didn't know that. I was thinking of offering up some space in my yard for people who lived in apartments.
We actually had gotten a suggestion about a month ago, and then that person was directed to ProStack, and ProStack is looking at it.
Thank you. I didn't know that, so that's great. But anyway, then just 2 other quick things that I wanted to say. Sometimes when you haven't regularly been attending town council meetings, even though you've been picking them up on TV, I just want to comment on my concern about sort of an adversarial environment. And I've been involved with coming to town meetings enough to know that that adversarial relationship kind of goes up and down and back and forth. But I don't know. I guess I just want to say sometimes I feel very protective of our board members for all that you do and all the work you put in and everything else. But I just want to say that I think there are some very thoughtful, careful comments being made. So perhaps there's been a history that's making people dig their heels in, but there's some strange little body language going on here. And so I just wanted to say I observed that tonight. And I also think that people genuinely come forward with their real concerns and efforts, and I urge you again not to take these personally, but to take these professionally. And I have admired some of the articulation on this side, so I would just say that's all I want to say, is I observed it. And then I kind of missed jumping up fast enough. I don't know if I'm getting slower, Andrew, or what, Mr. Mayor, but during the work session, so I assume since the work session isn't on the agenda that I can make a comment. Is this correct?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I just wanted to be sure and put this in the form of a question. Oh, excuse me. Before I say that adversarial thing, I also wanted to compliment Lisa Skumatz on her coffees that she's been holding. And I know that some of you had the wish to do that kind of thing as you held office, and sometimes it doesn't fit with your personal lives, which are very busy and everything. So I wanted to compliment you on doing that, Lisa. And I have not been able to attend yet, but I just think it's a great idea, and related to adversarial thoughts, sometimes a one-on-one with board members helps those things. So I just would urge the rest of you, if you can fit anything in your life that allows these one-on-ones, I think it helps a great deal. Now, excuse me, back to what I was going to say and missed in the other part of the work session. I don't know if this board has already given some very careful thought to the well issues, and I just one more time wanted to say I hope we have the very careful assurances that I would expect this board to put in place to protect our wells and our well owners. And that means that if anything adversarial occurs, I expect that you will take stands on whatever you have to sign to make sure there is recourse if our wells get all screwed up with this stuff.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Additional public comments? Of course, no.
My name is Tiger, Miriam Saunders, 311 West Charles. My nickname is Tiger. I'm Miriam Saunders, 311 West Charles. And I wasn't going to say anything, I just wanted to see what was going on. But when he mentioned chickens, are we not allowed to have chickens?
Wait for a little while.
I don't have chickens right now, only because of the raccoons, because I don't want them killed, because they were kind of my pets. But I moved in April '76, and I was told at that time, you have to realize Superior was very small at that time. I think it was 241 people in town, but we were told the only law about animals were we couldn't have a pig. And so we did have chickens and ducks, so I guess I didn't realize that it changed.
Somewhere along the way that I don't know.
Okay.
So,
well, I don't have
but
any
maybe it's
now.
changing. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I
Appreciate
bet
it.
there's baby chicks somewhere.
I suspect well.
In Rock Creek after Easter.
Well, there's probably baby chicks in a school somewhere, so. Trustee Skumatz.
I did want to thank you for your comment about the coffees, and at the next one, which is also going to be on a Saturday, 2 of the board members are going to come, and it is a publicly noticed meeting. And the one after that is probably going to be on a Wednesday night, I think, to try to alternate between weekends and weekdays and that sort of thing, but it'll be April 18th? April 18th, Saturday.
Okay, great. Thanks. Additional public comment? Seeing none, let's go to item number 5, which is presentations. And tonight we have a presentation for a proclamation for Arbor Day. So with that, I'd like to read a proclamation of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior declaring April 18th, 2009, not only Coffee Day, but Arbor Day, whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and the holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and trees can reduce erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, lower our heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, although not in the town of Superior, and countless of other wood products. And trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. And Arbor Day is a part of the Million Tree Initiative to plant 7,000 trees in 7 days around the region, although I believe that program was last year. Nonetheless, the Town of Superior hereby proclaims April 18th, 2009 as Arbor Day. Thank you very much, and I believe that this is our 5th year being a Tree City program. This is part of what this is about, which is awesome. I'm having hand signals from the back that this is our 6th year, so that's exciting, and I think that trees, honestly. So I read the proclamation so that we could be a Tree City, but, at the end of the day, I think really trees are an incredible asset to the community, and I think do nothing but increase property value. So appreciate all the effort that the town staff has done for that. With that, let's move to item number 6, which is the consent agenda. And remaining on the consent agenda is A, approval of the minutes of March 19th, 2009 meeting. B, acceptance of the minutes of the Historical Commission, Open Space Advisory Committee, and the Planning Commission, and the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Advisory Committee meetings. C, adoption of a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Louisville regarding library services. F, adoption of a resolution appointing an associate judge. H, adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with Western Disposal for waste-related services. And I, adoption of a resolution approving a change in sales tax vendor fees. With that, entertain a motion by Trustee Skumatz, second by Trustee D'Souza. Discussion regarding this. I believe we're spending money with Louisville, so Phyllis?
Gregorz?
Yes.
Muckle?
Yes.
Rosenfeld?
Yes.
Skumatz?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
D'Souza?
Yes.
Sorelli?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Motion carries, and it is exciting to see that we will be able to, we've already initiated this, but we'll be able to continue to partner with our friends in Louisville in terms of library services, so I think that's great. With that, various consent agenda items were pulled to follow the consent agenda, and the first one is D, final approval of an ordinance amending Chapter 2 of the Superior Municipal Code regarding administration and personnel. And
I'm embarrassed
Joe,
to
I
even
believe, is...
mention this,
That's yours.
and I'm not sure if I counted correctly or not. But if on page 10, I lost my glasses, so now I'm going blind here. Item, let me go back to my notes, maybe that'll help me. Section, there are glasses. Section 2-8-30A, -30B refers to items 2-8-30A 1 through 9, and I think there's only a 1 through 8.
You're correct.
That's it.
I'll make
Wow,
that.
okay, I didn't do the cross-reference. Outstanding effort upon your part.
I just have a habit of counting those when I see them.
All right.
Not that I read them, I just counted them.
So,
I'm so impressed before you said that.
I know. With that change, which I believe shouldn't be any difficulty for the
No problem.
attorney, I'd entertain a motion.
Well, I move that we approve, where is it?
It's on the back.
I need help. Ordinance number 0-7, Series 2009, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior amending Article 1 and Articles 3 through 8 of Chapter 2 of the Superior Municipal Code with the minor change I just pointed out to the board.
Thank you. Motion by Trustee Sorelli, second by Trustee Skumatz. Further discussion regarding this issue? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. The next one was E, and I believe, Dana, that was for you, preliminary approval of an ordinance amending Chapter 7.
So, before I get to the chickens, there was one other thing on page 6 with inoperable vehicles. And the one thing that I had on there is where it says it must be enclosed in a garage or other building, and I just wanted to bring it up to the board. I would propose that it be either screened or behind a fence or something else like that. I don't know that necessarily for aesthetics has to be completely enclosed in a garage or building, and so I wanted to bring that up to the board and see what everyone else thought on that.
Unless we care what it looks like on Google Earth, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably when you're going to, or if someone's picking over the fence, then, that's their problem. But the other one then was on the animals, and that was section 7-2-80, page 10, limit on household pets. Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that you can have 3 pot-bellied pigs in town. And reptiles. So I would like to add chickens. I've gotten quite a few people that asked about chickens and not roosters, hens. And the reason that I've gotten from those people is just that when they want to raise their own, so that they know exactly what they're being fed and where they're coming from. And I would like to support that. So I don't know as far as other areas what the number of chickens are and. I know there are certain regulations a lot of times on the type of coop you can have and all that kind of stuff. So, but I would like to add in that we consider adding chickens. And I don't know if there's an area, because it says household pets.
Yeah, I think we might want to separate it out, because I'm
Yeah.
not sure most people would consider chickens household pets. But I'm sure we could add another provision saying you may have so many chickens if you comply with the following: the coop, no roosters, all of those things. And we can limit the number there as well.
Okay.
So I would be happy to take a look at other language from other cities.
And could you also look, and not only chicken, other, because I've gotten this a lot from other people, goats or a goat for backyard maintenance. And I would like to see if there's any other...
instead of a lawnmower, you mean?
Instead of a lawnmower. I mean, it's completely green, recycles, and so I would like to just find out some information on that as well.
Trustee Gregoris?
Yeah, I have a question. What if a home has more than 3 dogs? What happens then? Because I know some people that have 4 dogs.
It's a kennel, by definition. And it's
Really?
a commercial enterprise. And these aren't changes. Both the inoperable vehicles within a structure is an existing provision. It has not been changed or recommended for change. And the list of animals and the number of animals within a household. I've been in many places and seen many places where they limit the total number mean, are 4 dogs more offensive than 3 dogs and 3 cats? But we allow 3 dogs and 3 cats, but you've crossed the line when you've brought in the 4th.
Well,
Over
they're
3 months of
unrelated.
age.
I mean, I only have 1 dog, but I know people that have more than 3, so.
And if you have 3 huge dogs versus 3 tiny dogs, that's another big impact, so.
We'll have a fascinating animal discussion when it comes back around.
Yeah.
Well, where did the numbers come from, and what types of animals? Where did that all come from?
I honestly don't know. They've been in your code for a long time.
Probably got carried.
So we can change it.
Is there any way we can make it more
Oh,
vague?
yeah, you can change it completely.
Okay.
You could change it to a total number of animals. You could change it to 4 dogs and 3 cats, or 4 dogs and 4 cats, or no limit. I mean, and it really varies depending on the community. I don't know that there's any particular standard, honestly.
Okay. Anything else from the board?
And then no limit can be compensated on the other end by health issues if it becomes a health hazard.
Right. You don't.
Oh, and even if you had no limit, or 5 dogs, or I mean, it's limited by you can't have any barking, and you can't have, there's a lot of other requirements.
So there are other mitigating.
Yard waste smells.
Exactly.
I think it's fine for limits. I don't know what is a reasonable limit, but I don't like the idea that it's spelled out specific animals. I think I would like it to be more vague.
Total weight.
That's a good one.
All right, well, let's talk about this, and just as an FYI, though, I suspect that there is, for the vast majority of our residents that live in covenant-defined areas, there might be restrictions that would be on top of anything that we would approve here, so. Okay, anything else from the board, public comment about this issue?
Again, Sandy Pennington again. I just have a question about process. This is the preliminary on Chapter 7. What happens next, and when is it finally approved?
Comes back around for a second reading, which typically is at the next meeting.
And so full discussion is had then, and then approvals at a third meeting?
No.
I mean, when does all this get
So you
worked
can
out?
discuss it now, discuss it then. It gets approved then, becomes effective 30 days after that, typically.
It gets approved at
Second next week. Could get approved.
Could get approved.
Odds are it will be on the consent agenda the next time it comes up. If it gets pulled, it would be discussed individually. If it was on the consent agenda, you could discuss it as comment on the consent agenda the next time. Or you can discuss it now to give your thoughts about what you'd like to see come back the next time if you're prepared to. I don't think all of us are prepared to just address the animal issue tonight.
Again, it goes to some of the resident confusion because it appears there's a lot of vagueness right now and lots of indecision.
Correct.
But it is not unusual then to have this all resolved and approved at the next meeting, and it becomes sort of surprising to homeowners that how did we resolve the 3 cats and 3 dogs, and maybe it should be 5 total household, and the chickens and the roosters and the whole thing.
So that resolution will come. So if it gets resolved, if there's any change, there may or may not be, that discussion will happen at the next meeting. And unless it's complex, unless more researches need to be done frequently, I don't have a crystal ball in front of me, frequently that would get approved at that meeting, and then the whole resolution would be approved as well. It might be delayed to another meeting. Town government is not as efficient as you might want because there's a whole bunch of input typically that you have, and so I can only speculate about what might happen, but I can't guarantee that that's
My
the course of
concern is
action.
really the inverse, is when it happens very quickly and people don't feel they've had the time to make appropriate comment.
Yeah.
Thank
Next
you.
meeting, though, typically is when this will be back around.
And in response to the issue of process, with the next packet, the board has raised 2 additional questions in addition to the stuff that has already been presented. The board will get follow-up information on those 2 items. What that follow-up information is, typically it will be, we've found out what the prevailing practices are amongst our immediately adjoining communities, or We've come up with 7 different alternatives that we've been able to find from the metropolitan region. And at that time, the board will make the decision as to what, do they want it to stay the way it has been for the last decade plus? Do they want to make a change? Do they want to adopt a code that's very comparable to one of our neighbors or somebody else? And that will be a result of the discussion 2 weeks hence.
Thank you.
Suzanne Sawyer Rattler, 405 South 3rd Avenue. So I've never met Ms. Pennington before. We just happened to be sitting near each other. But I'm interested in the position that she takes, especially related to people who are not used to governmental process and have not participated here at town council meetings previously. And so in the interest of citizen advocacy and in the interest of communication with citizens, which I know you all stand for because we all elected you, I wonder if the mayor on behalf of the board or someone on the board would like to volunteer to communicate to the public who's watching on television and any or all of us, what ought we be watching for on this one? I know some people like their junk cars, and I know some people like lots of animals and all that stuff. So as citizen advocate, what would one of you like to say about, if you're a citizen and you're watching, what are the next steps that you need to do? That's what I'm missing in this dialogue, and I'm feeling the need to say that.
Okay, fair enough. So basically, if we do nothing, everything will remain the same. So there's been some wordsmithing, some changes, some deletions of language because there are duplicates someplace else. So let me just read what is in the significant changes, which is in the memorandum of the board package. So that's changing the maximum time limitation for abating nuisances. Nuisance appeals would be conducted administratively. Removing the town's right to enter upon private property. Cruelty to animal provisions are moved and changed around a little bit, and language about fireworks permits. I think those are the highlights.
Yes.
So if those have touched a chord with you, that would be something that you would look out for. And
2 others, I think somebody raised the point that when they moved to town in 1976,
Right.
they were allowed to have chickens, and they
Some of
found
the
out tonight that they're not. And we found out from somebody else that there might be harbors of unknowingly commercial operations currently defined as a kennel.
So
And cars.
So that's,
In our
if those are
proposals.
important things to you, then that's where this is addressed.
Can I add something to that?
Of course.
So I just wanted to add that if people are watching and do have concerns that, and they weren't here tonight, that they could always email us or call us. Our numbers are on there as well, and let us know if you have specific concerns that weren't brought up. That would be another step. And then, again, to look for whether it comes back on the agenda next week if you want, and then you can come down and have a public comment at that time. So just look out for the agenda. It's online, or it's also, you can come down here to Town Hall.
Next meeting, not next week.
Sorry,
Next
next meeting,
meeting, yeah.
sorry, yeah.
And in terms of communication, if you're not on the town has a list, not a techno person here, but there's a listserv that we put out the agendas, and you can always download all the supporting documents online if you're interested in that, and it's on Channel 8 if you happen to subscribe to that
And it's on the
television
website.
service, and it's on the website.
On the
So
website.
we do our best in terms of outreach, but it's always a difficult problem. Thanks. Gladys.
That's 4C404 South 3rd Avenue. I guess something else that used to be in town along with the chickens was ducks, and it was a source of food years ago. So I think along with chickens, maybe you need to consider the ducks, and with the economy situation, we're getting back into the gardening scenario. We're also getting back into raising our own food. Something else that used to be in town was goats. There was on the southwest corner of Williams and 2nd Avenue was a goat living in the basement for a long time. Anyway, my comments about Chapter 7 is on the very first page on the yellow, it has the section regarding the town's right to enter upon private property has been deleted. And further back in the documentation, it is on the old, on page 4, section 711. Now, on the part that has been rewritten and that I'm assuming that you're considering for passage, on page 1, Article 1, Section 7-1-10, you have put back in that it can, under authorized inspector means means police officer, building inspector, code enforcement officer, or other officer of the town authorized by the town manager to inspect and examine public or private property in the town to ascertain the nature and essence of any nuisance. So you took it out in the old, but then you put it back in. So you need...
It's only a definition, not a right, though.
The definition says we're inspecting property. The previous language said we have the town has the right to enter onto somebody's property. As an example, if you have an inoperable car or a car up on jacks in your driveway, we're observing it, and we may cite it if we find that it violates a section of the municipal code. We don't have the right to go onto the property to remove the car. The only thing we can do is we can go up the sidewalk, we can leave a hanger on the door, we can deliver a letter, but we don't have the right to enter into a home, enter onto property, despite what the code has traditionally said. But we're observing public and private property.
I see. Thanks.
Anyway, I'd like to see, under authorized inspector, Article 1, Section 7-1-10, that you remove private property from that paragraph. And then I wanted, Mr. Mayor, you and I had a conversation about the house on the corner of 2nd and Cold Creek in Original Town, and you had told me that when this chapter came up that it would be dealt with in this chapter. And so I'm wanting to know if on page 2, section 7-1-50, under abatement, and also section 7-1-40 under prohibition, if that old house is included in either one of those two sections.
It's an interesting point. We need to actually add something about moving houses into town and what the requirements would be.
That's under discussion by the Planning Commission as part of Chapter 16, which is the Building and Land Use Code.
Okay.
It is not part of health, sanitation, and animals. So if the comment was made that the relationship linkage between the absence of an existing standard, and there is currently no standard about how you move a structure within the municipality, but if the town wants to have one, it would be appropriate in 16 land use or 18 building code. And it is being discussed specifically as part of Chapter 16 by the Planning Commission.
Right.
But I believe your answer to the complaint or the query was, we don't have any regulations governing the moving of structures within the community. And that still is the case until we make the change in Chapter 16.
Great. Thanks. Yes, Trustee D'Souza, sorry.
Thank you. I just wanted to get a follow-up on that from the town manager. Is there an ordinance or anything about a house that's sitting on, once they move it and then it sits on top of the posts or whatever it is, would that all be in the same ordinance?
It would be.
Okay.
The unique situation about this property and the structure that we're currently describing, and candidly, the absence of those regulations we abided by, or we were flaunted, if you will, when we moved the Asti House into the community.
All right.
It sat on timbers for well over a year, but in any instance. It currently sits on property not owned by the owner of the structure. It was an agreement between him and his neighbor. While I build my foundation to place this structure, can I put this home, which is on timbers, on your property? Yes, you may. The neighbor is now getting tired of the situation and has asked that it be moved. We've been told that there was supposed to be a resolution by April 15th, later this week. Whether it gets done or not, I do understand that there's been some activity over there, whether they're starting to dig a foundation. I know there's been some dialogue with the finance department about paying the necessary system development fees, water, sewer, and storm tap-on fees necessary to place the house. The pending action before the Planning Commission to re-subdivide the lot so that the home could be oriented a different direction was withdrawn by the property owner. So, but presently, we have no regulations, but the property owner on which the home is now sitting is saying, I'm tired, get it out, and they are making some movement. And we're hoping it'll be by the 15th of April.
And so both of those issues could be addressed in the new...
Yes.
Okay.
How you move a house, how long it can sit there in such a capacity, what kinds of notifications, permits, and fees might be associated. All of that will be part, I think, of Chapter 16.
Okay, thank you.
If you can pass it along, that probably makes sense that, however this is going to be structured when we look at it, that the fees need to be paid prior to the house being moved onto a property, so that tap fees or whatever are a requirement. So it would prevent us from being in this situation that we find ourselves in right now.
It would also be nice that Superior not become the dumping ground of old houses from older, wherever it is that they come. I understand they're remodeled, and then some of them look very nice. I understand that. But Superior's been the dumping ground of all this crap for years. I think it needs to be stopped. It is the 21st century.
Okay.
I just wanted to say also the ordinances that have been on the books for years and years, have been years, early 1900s probably is when some of those got done.
Okay, thanks. Additional public comment about this particular issue? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion by Trustee D'Souza, is that right?
Is this by 6?
Just for the preliminary approval.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion, ordinance number, what would that be?
No, there's no ordinance.
Just so we wouldn't read it, just a preliminary reading of ordinance amending Chapter 7 of the Superior Municipal Code, Health, Sanitation, and Animals, to come back again with suggested
Come back as a preliminary, or...
Come back as a second.
Come back as a preliminary.
Preliminary reading or second reading?
What would it be?
Second
reading. Come back as a second reading
Either way.
with the changes.
Okay. Motion by Trustee D'Souza, second by Trustee Gross. Sorry, hopefully my hand waving didn't do that to you.
That was
all in favor?
Can we
Unanimous?
discuss?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is it not possible to move to have it come back for a preliminary, since there was a fair amount of issues on this?
Change in it?
And if so...
I don't know which way.
Certainly.
Legally,
Certainly you
whatever
could, or you could continue the discussion after you have a discussion about the second reading, I assume.
Yeah, and there's no obligation for you to approve it next meeting.
I understand that, but it's just... I think there's a fair amount, well...
Yeah, there's enough.
Well, anyway, we have this motion, I just wanted to ask that question before we voted. So,
Even if it comes back as a second, we can still ask for more changes.
So if people feel strongly that it needs to come back as a preliminary reading, please vote this motion down. If you think that it's okay to continue talking about it at the second reading, then be in favor, just for procedural issues.
Are we actually asking for inclusion of wording for ducks and chickens and goats? Because if we are, then I would say preliminary. If we put that off to an amendment, then, and there aren't substantive changes or major changes, then probably second would be fine. So.
I would think preliminary only because that might be quite a bit of discussion on that.
But if it goes to a second, can it go to a third reading?
It's just
It
a
keeps coming back.
continuation of the second
Just keep
reading.
bringing it back.
Okay.
You could make
So
the
it's-
amendments at the next meeting, but not vote to approve, and have it carried over to the subsequent meeting, which would be the first meeting in May. Procedurally, however you choose. At this juncture, we've been asked for additional information about inoperable vehicles, chickens and goats.
or to
We
look
heard-
at ordinances, we might come up with other animals, too.
Correct. You've had audience comment about ducks and pit bulls.
Well, and also working the animal list.
Yeah.
Numbers.
And numbers and...
I think, well, personally, I think preliminary is the way to go. But
Okay. Well, we can vote it down and do preliminary.
Can't just vote it down. So it makes no difference to me whatsoever. So whatever the pleasure of the board is I'm certainly happy with. So. Okay. So with that, we have a motion and a second. So all in favor of the second reading, say aye or raise your hand. All in favor? Skomatz and Muckle. Opposed is Cirilli, Rosenfeld, D'Souza, Gregorius, and Williams. So that fails. So I'd entertain a motion to. Well, I don't know. It doesn't make any difference. So it'll
come back as a
preliminary.
back
around as a preliminary
with the additional.
No, it'll be staff direction to bring it back. Okay, let's see, where are we? We're at G, adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with CoCal Landscape Services for annual planting of flowers. Trustee Williams.
Yes. I see that we had budgeted $98,000, and we're now proposing $73,000. What I want to know is how much did we spend in other years in the past? Is there anyone that can answer that for the annual planting of flowers?
She's back there. She's hiding. She's ready.
And it may be a ballpark, but I can't imagine anybody who's going to be prepared to tell you what our 2008 in 5 different funds was. But.
So my only recommendation always in circumstances like this to staff is don't guess. If you happen to know what the ballpark figure is, otherwise we can get back to us.
Juanita Dominguez, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Open Space. We actually have that information.
Wow.
On the front of the cover, we use last year's numbers to show last year's details. So it's $80,496 was the total.
Okay. From last year?
From last year.
Okay. And then, and were other years similar, less, more? Do you know that?
Very similar.
Okay. Then, I'm going to play ignorant here. Why don't we plant perennials? Do we ever do perennials? Okay. I'm not a flower planter, so I'm sure that was not the best question, but I'd just like to know.
Any question is a good question, as we all learned in school.
I'll have to leave that to the expert, the superintendent of Parks.
So do we plant perennials, and why don't we, if we don't?
Economically would make sense.
Molly McLaughlin, Superintendent of Parks and Open Space. The difference between perennials and annuals is that perennials are not as showy. So with annuals, you get a bigger bam factor than you do with perennials. So that's why we haven't. And the last 2 years that I've been here, we've planted annuals. And prior to that, they tried perennials, but they just didn't get the impact and got calls.
What did they plant? Just curious.
I would have to go back and look and get back to you on that.
Okay. All right, well.
But that's the difference between the perennial and the annual. The annual has a brighter, more vivid color. The perennials are much more muted.
So I guess the question would be, what is the look we're going for? The bright, flowery colors, or just plantings?
And is it all one or all the other, or can you do a third of perennials?
Exactly.
And
half and half, or a third.
Just to save money in the future.
Exactly. I mean, that's kind of where I'm going with this.
We can do anything that you want. I mean, possibilities are endless. The reason we do these plantings is for visual impact in those particular areas. We can adjust those as needed.
Trustee D'Souza.
Don't we have perennials, though, like on some of the medians and things like that? There's different perennials that we use currently, isn't that correct?
Yes, we have hundreds of shrub beds that we have perennials in rock and daylilies and shrubs.
So these are all the accent areas that we use for annuals.
Correct.
Okay, well, I was just kind of looking unconventional, maybe save a little. It's just my thoughts.
Okay.
Actually,
Trustee Rosenfeld?
You may not want to sit down just yet. Either for one of you two. The note here, there's a note here indicating that there are certain areas that we're not planting. Now, is that due to trying to save a little money?
Yes, that is. if you look at the budget implications, the general fund is the fund area that is most affected. And so the budget was adjusted by about $12,600. To reflect that, we will not be planting the baskets that hang on the bridge here on McCaslin, and we will not be planting a big bed in Community Park.
Okay. So and that's the only impact? That was what I wanted to ask, is exactly where are we not planting?
Those are the two only
Okay.
areas that we will not plant.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Trustee Williams, or?
Well, I was just kind of curious, just in general, this is a question I had, about this, just, in terms of how far back could we cut plantings if we really wanted to save money? Obviously, you could do nothing, but if we assumed we wanted, to at least, maintain a good visual appearance of the town, but still really try to cut back, did you guys really look at how far we could go?
We did, and really, if you look at some of the high-impact areas, it's at Rock Creek and McCaslin, the entry of the community. Those are hugely visual areas. The two monuments, if you recall, there's typically a lot of color during the spring and summer. So if we have the marigolds, the petunias, those kind of things, they're bright and vibrant. The areas at the pools, both pools, as you enter on either side of the pools, as you enter the south pool, just before you get into the parking lot, there's a nice size bed there as well. But those areas are particularly funded by Class 1, and the cuts that were made were typically for our general fund. General fund are the areas that we're having a difficult time with.
Okay. So where would the general fund, say we said let's not spend any money from the general fund, where would we not plant?
We wouldn't plant in original town. We wouldn't plant along the streetscape. We would not plant here at Town Hall or across the street or anything at Community
Park.
So it would all be basically impacts to original town?
Majority.
Community Park.
And Community
Park. Down. Okay.
So what if we eliminated some of the beds that are kind of in the center of the community, such as, let's see here, by the Fire Hill, Torrey's Peak, and Indiana, or, just some of the, maybe not the areas where you enter into the community, but maybe throughout. What would that save us?
Those areas are financed through the Class 1 or the Landscape Fee Fund.
Okay.
And those are the monthly $30 is what helps with those areas, the enhanced landscaping. We had not cut those budgets.
Okay. So then we're just back to the general fund as what we could, how much could we cut? Is it?
You can cut $12,365.
And that's based on what you said earlier, where the areas that we would be cutting from.
In response to your question, we could cut it all and do no plantings. But recognize the motivation for the cuts this year, as the board knows, we recently did the contingency budget and identified just under $400,000 worth of areas where we thought we could scale back. One of the areas that we decided to scale back was general fund supported landscape improvements. And you're seeing the result of that here. There's nothing that says we have to spend $50,000 or $60,000 a year out of the landscape fee fund, which is supported by the $30 per month household assessment that is included on everybody's water bill, most everybody's water bill. There's nothing that says we have to do that. But we're not experiencing the revenue streams difficulties like we were in the general fund, and that's why we're not recommending anything. The board approved certain amounts of allocations for certain activities within those other funds. SMID being another one. We're not recommending any change to what the board had given us the authority to do back in September, October when we approved the budget. The change came in the general fund.
So if we cut any from the landscape fee fund, would that make a dent in reducing the landscape fee at all?
Your total expenditure in the landscape fee fund is $41,000. It's a $1.3 million budget.
So give me an idea, is that, $1 off of the landscape fund per home, or, I mean, what are we looking at?
3% of your entire landscape fee budget goes towards annual plantings.
Sandy
Just one
Pennington
sec.
again.
So, I'll entertain public comment here in a second. I just want to make sure that we wrap up the board questions about this. Okay? Yes, thanks.
I think the question, certainly as a homeowner in the area, is, I have wondered this actually numerous times, is there a master plan in terms of the plantings and what is going where? And if that master plan could be reviewed by you folks, so we sort of have an aerial, broad view of where those plantings are and what they will be. But being a sort of avid gardener, a lot of impact can be gained with perennials in the background and annuals in the foreground, and that might be a balance to consider. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Additional public comment? Well, my comment is that I think that for the small dollar figure that we spend upon this, you have a huge bang for your buck, that it does, it's sort of my comments about trees, that it does nothing but enhance property values, and if what we're talking about is removing all of this from original town, I don't think that I'm going to be real excited about doing that, so I personally would recommend plowing ahead with our current recommendation.
And I wasn't favoring the more, the advanced cuts, but I was interested in maybe us considering partial perennials, perhaps in the kind of design that we were just described for us, just to see what happened, if we'd see what the budget implications would be, and the look and feel.
Okay.
So,
But I'm not recommending.
Trustee Williams?
So how much would we be talking if we did perennials and some annuals? I mean, are we cutting a third?
I couldn't tell you at this time, but what I can tell you is in every single bed that we have a monument, there are already perennials in the beds.
And do they cost more than annuals?
They're already there.
No, I just meant if we,
Did more.
yeah, if we did
The
more.
unit price is typically a little bit more expensive
That's
for a
what- yes.
perennial than it is for an annual.
Thank you. That would make sense.
Further discussion about this? Otherwise, Trustee Williams, would you like to entertain a motion?
All right. Can I alter that motion?
Any old thing that you'd like.
Okay. I'd like to entertain a motion to go back and reconsider the, what the cost implications and where they would be put for perennials and annuals, and see how we can reduce further our costs.
Okay, so just procedurally, so to do that, you wouldn't have to support this particular one. That could be staff direction, or we could vote on that as well. The question is, what should we do with the resolution for this evening?
And she needs a second.
Okay. Motion by Trustee Williams. Is there a second regarding that?
Sure, I'll make a second.
Okay. Motion by Trustee Skumatz. Further discussion about this? Trustee Skumatz?
So my question is all about timing. So is this something where we plant these things starting right now? Or is this something where we plant them months from now?
Most are the spring plantings. There's a very small allowance of less than $4,000, or about $4,000 with the entire $73,000 proposal before you. That would be fall plantings. the vast majority are spring plantings. And the failure to approve a contract tonight means we don't plant any annuals anywhere. We don't plant them in the SMID, we don't plant them in landscape fee, we don't plant them in the general fund.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Want to repeat the motion one more time?
Let's see, the motion was to come back and look at this. Let me paraphrase because I won't be able to say but I think it was to come back and look at this again with some changes in the plantings. Is that an adequate paraphrase of your motion? Okay. All in favor? One, Williams opposed? Cirilli, Rosenfeld, Skumatz, Muckle, D'Souza, and Gregoris. All right. I'll entertain any other motion from anybody else. Trustee Skumatz?
I'd just like to make a comment that
Sure.
I would like to see something like that be examined for next year.
Okay.
It didn't hurt to try.
No, no doubt.
And we could always, I'm certain that the staff has heard the interest in cost-saving measures, and they will explore that issue either for this season or in upcoming years. So I'm looking at them sternly. Thank you. Trustee D'Souza.
So, Trustee Williams, I think it's always great to bring up cost savings. That's always something that we need to look at. And I agree with what the mayor said, though, about part of the beauty of our town is the plantings as well. And so we really need to keep that in balance, the cost versus home resale and everything else. I would also like to maybe look in for next year, though, some xeriscaping, because that is one of the programs that we have, and I know that we're doing that over at the Ted Asty Park. But I don't know if there's anywhere else that we could look into that at some of these annual planting beds as well. So,
Well, I do want to make one more comment. I do want to make it clear that I'm not asking for changes because I want it to look less beautiful.
Right.
I'm asking for the same beautifulness, but less cost.
It's a big process.
I'm sure that's
Okay. Trustee Skumatz.
possible somehow.
I'd like to make a motion.
Sure.
And I should say that the cost savings from the perennials seem great because the purchase price might be a little bit more, but the labor savings is great.
Long term.
I suggest you study rapid diets very carefully before you.
Yes. So I'd like to make a resolution number R-24, Series 2009, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an agreement for services with Cocal Landscape Services for annual flower bed installation.
Motion by Trustee Skumatz. Is there a second? Trustee D'Souza. Further discussion regarding this issue? Phyllis.
Skumatz.
Yes.
Williams.
No.
Rosenfeld.
Yes.
Muckle.
Yes.
Gregoris.
Yes.
D'Souza.
Yes.
Cirilli.
Yes. Excuse me, yes.
Thank you very much. That motion carries. Next, we're on to 6J, adoption of a resolution approving a contingency real estate purchase agreement with Charles Oxner. Trustee Williams.
Yes. Well, I wanted to get a little bit more information. So I see that it is contingent, the acquisition, partial acquisition of Oshner upon a preliminary development plan. Is it contingent upon a final development plan as well? Can
No.
you maybe?
No.
No.
It's contingent upon a preliminary development plan, an annexation agreement, an annexation, and a subdivision.
So, in other words, if any of them fail, does the...
Purchase doesn't take place.
The purchase does not take, okay. That is what I wanted to know. All righty. Anybody else?
Further questions or comments about this particular issue? It's analogous to the discussion that we've had in the past about other properties, that it's all contingent upon all these parts coming together. Public comment.
I'll wait for public comment.
George Kepner, 7520 West Coal Creek. This is embarrassing to me. if I was going to give the developer everything he wanted, he would have to start off by giving me the 13 acres, and I'd feel a little bit better about maybe giving him most of what he wanted. But the way this is wrote, this is who's working for who.
What specifically is the issue?
Well, we're going to give him $1.1 million, and then we're going to guarantee the annex. We're going to guarantee this. He's going to get his subdivision.
Well, no, there's no guarantee.
That's what I just heard. Just said that, yeah.
Well, no, it's contingent. So the board will still vote, right, based on the annexation agreement, the preliminary development plan, on whether or not to move forward. If the board approves those things, then this moves forward. So it's still, and this is actually going to be my comment, I guess I shouldn't have waited, but it's still completely contingent upon the board voting to move forward. If the board does not move forward with the PDP, or the preliminary development plan, then this doesn't happen, right?
Yes.
So does that address your comment, or do you?
No, I mean, I'm great for the open space. Well, let's buy it outright. It's ours. Now, you want a deal? Bring your cards to the table. But don't swing this carrot that we're going to get 13 more acres of open space if we annex you and if we give you the PP. Come on.
Well, I don't understand what
let's make these two separate issues.
So you're proposing that we try to just buy the 13 acres and then let the developer come forward separately?
All by himself.
Okay.
I mean, it ain't like they're giving it to us for free. We're giving them $1.1 million.
Right.
We're definitely paying for it.
Right.
So I feel that it should be a completely separate issue.
Right. Yeah, that's actually a good question, and that's,
As long
of
as
course,
it's
the other
a
side.
question.
The other side would
good
have to
question.
agree to that too, right? But that's a good comment. We can.
The other side, I mean, they're taking our money.
Right, but
You're
he may not be
spending
willing to split it up if he can't get the other half. If he can't get the other half paid for essentially by the developer. So, I mean, just understanding that's a great comment. Just remember, right? There's always two sides to the deal. So, but I agree with you. That's,
if we're going to buy 13 acres, let's buy it, and then let's deal.
You have to have a willing seller.
Yeah. No.
So,
Not.
Yes.
I'm going to sell you this, but if this don't go through, I'm taking it back. Thanks anyway.
Okay.
It'd be different if they were giving it to us.
Right. The flip side is there's maybe a much greater willingness to try and compromise on their side too to get the other development through in a manner that the town will be happy with. So I mean, it's a great comment. I'm just saying, remember, this is negotiation, and this was my comment earlier. Can we try and reach a good kind of compromise? Because government usually works best when all sides can compromise. Are we able to reach a good compromise? And so this is kind of a first move, but it's still completely contingent upon what Remington actually brings forward. So I think what's really important would be great, from everybody, original town residents, everyone in town, is to really look at the actual proposed development and say, is this a good compromise if we end up with this much open space and then a development that looks like this? Is that a good compromise, or still, no, not a good compromise, we don't want it? So, I mean, I'd personally like to hear I mentioned, just echoing what I said earlier, it would also be great to hear comments within the context of the overall deal. Is it good to get open space along with this development or not? So.
It's a great deal, except the ground, some of the ground, or most of the ground that we're purchasing is the ground that is in the most difficult spot to build. Pretty much I would consider unbuildable due to the water tables.
It's actually one of the highest rated on the Open Space Committee's report as well, that area. So it's better purchase for the town.
Yeah.
For open space.
Right.
But however, it's a very hard piece of ground to build on.
Yeah.
It's not desirable for houses at all.
Right.
So, I mean, we're giving a lot for something that he probably couldn't use anyway.
Well, recall, I think, out of the remainder, they still have to meet the open space requirement for what they are developing on, right?
Yes.
So it's not like we're buying something and they get away with less open space requirements on the land that they're still developing on, right?
I understand that.
Yeah.
Completely understood. I'm just saying.
Understood. Yep.
It's a great piece of property and look great for open space, but we're giving quite a little bit for something that would cost a whole bunch more to build on. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they would have to import all their dirt and all the rest that comes with that to even try to build there, versus where they're going now, no cost. and kind of pacifying us in the meantime, which, so that's.
Point well made.
Yep.
I feel that they're dangling a carrot in front of a rabbit. I think it should be separated completely. It's, like I say, our open space money that we're spending on a piece of property that's 13 acres. Let's go and add the 5 acres or 4 acres conservative that's already in the town on the east side. They're saying 17 acres total and all this and that. That's misconfusing. Let's just buy the 13 acres. It is a floodplain. Can't be built on. That's why they wanted to haul all the dirt and Bridgeton. And like I say, carrot in front of a rabbit. It's wrong.
Okay, thanks.
Gladys Forshey, 404 South Third Avenue. When this property was Mayhofer property, Ulrich County then worked a deal, and that's the reason that Ochsner ended up with it, because they switched this piece of property for this piece of property, and it is just, if you're going to do business, do it fair and square on this side of the board, that you're buying this piece of property for this much, and, you know, this over here can still be developed, but it's totally separate. I just, there's something about this piece of property that its history has just been all jumbled up from day one when it was divided up, and I just hate to see the town get into a deal. Both George's comments about the carrot is fine. I wasn't going to use that, but I just think that if you're going to buy this piece of property, the 13 acres, you have the open space funds, buy it, clear cut, and then go back, and if you're going to talk about the development, that's a whole totally different issue. No switching back and forth.
Okay, thank you.
Suzanne Sawyer Ratliff, 405 South 3rd Avenue. Okay, I just wanted to comment to follow Trustee Rosenfeld's thread that if indeed you're suggesting that we have to hear it all, we have to hear it all about the open space, we have to hear it all about the purchase of the land and the development. It was very distinctive to me tonight that there was no specific information on the product itself. And I remember one of the last times they brought this forward, there was a fair amount of information on the product and those peaked roofs and what it looked like and the implications for the view quarter and whether or not we had lines that were grids and all that sort of thing. So what I would say, if we're going to follow that thread and if we're going to think that way, then I think it's important to see detailed information on the product itself, because I think it's critical what the design will be, especially on that western edge. So I'm with you, I'm listening to you, but let's have it all.
So if I could just make a quick comment about that. So I completely agree with that, and that's exactly what will come forward. Procedurally, what happened tonight was just get the lay of the land from the developer. They take input. They might say, hey, you know, this is going to be too difficult for us. We're not coming back. Mm-hmm. It's part of the town's procedures that we try not to have them, developers or anybody, spend huge amounts of money to put into some project and then say, no, we're not interested in that. We don't think that that's a very friendly environment to be in. So this was just a concept plan review. Everything else, the things that you think are important, I think we all agree that that's important, and they are coming back to be reviewed.
But I don't know, Mr. Mayor, if you agree with this, but it was distinctive to me that it was omitted tonight when it was there previously. So I guess I just like you to take a peek at that.
Okay.
Think about it.
All right.
Well,
thanks.
Yeah, just one quick follow-up. I mean, they said that they did give us information that some of the the houses would basically be the same style, and those kinds of things. So I think they just didn't include a lot of detail. Now, whether it was omitted on purpose or just because they wanted to come in without spending a lot of money to see, to read the tea leaves, so to speak, I'm not sure. But again, from my standpoint, the things that I think are really important to hear feedback on, and feedback early from residents, is just around the specifics of the concept plan that we did see. Alignment with the grid versus separate development, view corridors, the location of the houses, right? Those kinds of comments. I think that's what we need to hear early to really understand whether or not this is, and the developers need to hear it to really understand whether or not they want to move forward. Again, ultimately, when we get to the PDP point, we'll have that level of detail and we'll be able to go through it. But at that point, the developer spent a lot of money. And what I'd like to do is avoid a very contentious debate like we had last time and see if we can move this along a little bit better. So if the developer, which they did say, we'd be willing to come back and put together a proposal that aligns the street grid, for example, do we want to see that, right? What are residents willing to live with? That's really where the valuable comment, I think, will come at this stage.
Right, thank you, and I'm with you on that, but I also have loved to say here previously, and I'll say again, that's a developer's job. That's their job, to come forward with levels of detail. And if they spend money for it, then I think that's their job.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I like us better. I think we stand for us. And we pay attention to the fact that this is how they proceed, not only in our community, but everywhere else. But I'm preaching to the choir. You know that. Thanks.
Thank you. Additional public comment about this particular issue? Welcome.
Peter Blair, 107 Cayuga Way, and I apologize if this is the incorrect forum for this, but please do tell me if it is. But I'm very curious to hear the town or the board's opinion on the effect of this new development in the surrounding community, property values. What are the benefits to the town, and what are the disadvantages to having this outside of the open space? If that's been considered at this point. I personally haven't read the development plan to any degree, but I'd like to hear any opinions on that, if this is the correct forum for
Sure,
that.
it's fine. Well, if anybody wants to weigh in on it. The way that I look at this is an open space transaction that we're trying to obtain really high valuable, at least in my mind, ecologically sensitive open space and do it in an economically reasonable way to do that. So that's where I am at with the open space. Whether or not the housing proposal is going to come forward, I have no idea. Sure. They might say that we have examples of people not coming forward after they've heard comments, but they might come forward and we'll be able to work something out. But once again, I think this is really high valuable ground that we should preserve, and this is a way to do it. So, at least my perspective.
I guess I'd be interested too if there's weighing the value of the open space versus the opposite of the value of a new neighborhood or the disadvantages.
Great question.
That may be.
As a member of the Open Space Committee, this is definitely one of the high-valued properties, and specifically the southern part of it. What was it?
Not all of it, just
specifically the southern part, because of all the damage and there's just a lot of reasons the northern part isn't as valuable. If the seller does not want to sell the property, short of, I guess, condemning it, there's nothing we can do about it. This property was slated for development, so this is, in a way, I guess, a compromise to be able to get that. But again, it's going to depend on whether they come with something that we like. I mean, they came before with something we didn't like, even though we were getting open space out of it, but it wasn't something that the board was happy with, and we voted it down. So, and as far as reasons why, I guess, besides the fact that I think they have a right to develop that property, I think something reasonable there could help connect Sagamore and Original Town. So it also would help to a small degree target. So there's different reasons why I might consider that. But again, I look at it as here's an opportunity maybe to get some prime open space, but we have to wait and see if what they offer us is going to be something that we're willing to accept. That's my personal opinion on that.
Yeah, my personal opinion regarding whether or not there's a housing development on that remaining property or any of that property, property hasn't been annexed, but it has always been in our comprehensive plan to be considered as a residential area now. That can change, as people will tell you, our plans sometimes change, but that is in there. There's some increment of cost benefit to the town for additional residential property. Our finance people will do a study of that, but it's always a trade-off. This particular proposal that we had the concept plan reviewed on tonight, it's way too early to say whether that is something we would like or not and would go forward with. It's kind of tricky because I think everybody feels uncomfortable with the idea of if this agreement, this resolution approving the contingency real estate transaction gets approved by us, that we're somehow indicating that we're leaning, that we're going to go for the approval, and that's not the case. And so it'll be a close call on the residential property if it does come forward, and that remains to be seen if they come forward with a preliminary development plan.
And I just wanted to add to what he said is, and I agree mostly, that sometimes, in my opinion, I think it's difficult to get a positive with a possible negative, and pairing them together, that always bothers me. I mean, you may come forward thinking great things. I might get 13 acres of open space acquisition here, but then I might be, later on down the road looking at it going, I wish I had not, maybe I had not done that, because now I'm looking at a negative. And I don't know the negative at this point because I don't know the plans. So for me, I find it very difficult to look at contingencies.
Sure, and not having seen the preliminary development plan yet, do you see any negative at this point, or does it look like a positive and a positive? That's, I guess, I'm also very interested to hear that.
Can't answer that. There's not enough information for me.
So we'll wait and see what they bring forward.
More's coming forward. I mean, it broaches the bigger issue, whether or not we're going to ever put residential development in this particular area or in other parts of town. And, the potential upside for that is that there's homes for people to live in, so that's a good thing. I think infill projects are very helpful because they comply with sort of regional planning where we don't develop in unincorporated areas or areas that would be lower density, so I think that that's beneficial. So, and then the utilities make a whole bunch of money off the project if that's, if it comes forward, depending on what the number of lot sizes are. So I don't think, so I know some people think that this is a negative, but this actually, for all of us that live in houses in the town of Superior, the upside is that we build houses so people can move into them. So I think that that's a positive attribute. So whether or not this particular development suits everybody's fancy, not sure, but as I said earlier, I believe the proof will be in the pudding, and that's coming up in the future.
Thank you.
So additional public comment.
Rick Stopper, 1122 Eldorado Drive. I just have a question with regard to the history of this parcel of property that we're talking about. Was it always a parcel of property, or was it created by the combination of various pieces of property? And did parts of it ever get traded for? Somewhere in my memory, I remember this gentleman or the owner of this land traded some land for another parcel of land so that the town could have the benefit of that enlarged property for a park or for maybe it was even Town 9. I don't remember. Was this a different project or completely or?
So there might be somebody here in the audience that can speak to the history of this particular issue, Mr. Stewart. But so my recollection of this, which is now going way back, is that the Single Tree property which is the open space, which is west of town, was believed owned by Mr. Oxner. That was felt to be high priority open space because it was contiguous with other areas of open space. And so I don't know that this was I believe a county transaction and not a City of Boulder transaction, but so there was an issue where the Singletree property, perhaps with dollars, once again, we weren't privy to that, was essentially traded for the Oxner parcel. And part of that discussion was that, well, it might make sense that this would be, given that it's an infill project, might make more sense for that to be residential as opposed to the Singletree property. And that was many years ago, and that's my best recollection of how this came to pass. So
that's all
the Town 9 is actually part of the Surrey development, so that was a transaction with Costco.
Well, and I wasn't sure what the name of it was, but I thought there was some trading of land with Oxner with the town for the purpose of consolidating some pieces of property somewhere, and I was trying to figure out.
No consolidation. I believe that this was owned in its entirety.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So,
can I just add something to that? One of the things, too, is when we were going through the comp plan review several years ago, there was an issue whether that property was slated for, Oshner property slated for open space or whether he had a right to develop. And there was some indication from paperwork that he was told that he could develop on that property. So that's
what I remember.
That's right.
All right. Thank you.
Gladys, 4404 South 3rd Avenue. The property that Oshner owned is where the power lines are that run to the west of that. And he couldn't develop that, and that's the reason that Boulder County did the negotiation.
Okay. Additional public comment.
I'm Bob McCool, 312 West Boulder Press. It's everybody else is coming up.
Sure.
So a lot's kind of just come to mind listening to a lot of this. And one thing
You want chickens on the property.
I want chickens on the property.
And a community garden.
Free range.
Mayor Mucko, you keep mentioning infill, and my understanding of infill and the research I've done, I look at the original town of Superior and all of these empty lots, and I see them being built on, is what I think of as infill. And I don't think of this as infill. This is an additional development. If you were parsing out those parcels and kind of letting people build on there, as similar in style to original town, maybe, but to me it just doesn't feel like an infill project, and I've heard that referred a number of times. And I think this is a separate development. I think it's radically different than original town. I think it's radically different than Sagamore. I don't want to speak to whether I think this deal is combining the two is a good idea or a bad idea. I think you guys are involved in negotiations, which is what we elect you to do, and I hope you'll keep it, that you'll look out for our best interests, and it's our job to kind of keep tabs on that while we're coming up here and telling you our thoughts. But that whole development is just so radically different. I just don't like hearing it referred to as infill, because it isn't. Infill kind of, to me, says that we're continuing to build up a neighborhood. We're filling in a neighborhood, and we're not. We are building an entirely different neighborhood. We're separating the neighborhood. We're building something completely different than the neighborhoods that are on either side of it, and it's just a very different thing. That sort of just came to me today. This is a very different development than either of the two developments that are on either side. So that's all I want to say.
Okay, thanks. Additional public comment? Sure. Sure, the teeny comment.
Suzanne Sawyer Ratliff, 405 South 3rd Ave. I apologize for jumping up here again, but I can't help but say historically when someone asks about the history, the number of petitions, the number of surveys that have talked about the citizens in this community standing for open space. That's very, very clear. But there's also been very, very clear messages about enough on the rooftops, the problems that, yes, we get initial money on these rooftops, but it bothers me when I hear not only the infill comment, but also the comment that somehow over time we're going to benefit. We get initial money off of these, but when you look at the cost to our infrastructure, what it does to our traffic, I feel like I want to say ditto, ditto. How many times have we said this? Rooftops, over time, cost this community money, and if you compare the benefits of open space, but the rooftop costs, I hate when we're talking about this parcel to have us saying, woo, we need it, we need places for people to live. Let's not forget to look at the costs. And Trustee Williams, I appreciate your thoughtfulness about these balances, and I know you're all feeling those difficult balances, but I want to come back to the number of times overall this community has stood for open space, but against more rooftops. That's the challenge, isn't it?
Yep. So I promised myself I wasn't going to say anything about this, but the number of houses that we're talking about here pales in comparison to the numbers that we're talking about across the street. I mean, the potentially would be, 1,500 residential units over there. Who knows? I mean, it's the 58 homes, and in terms of the percentage numbers, is, I understand your viewpoint about rooftops, but is in the big scheme of things, is a minor percentage. So, promised myself I didn't go there, and sorry that I did, but just I had to say. So, with that, we need to move on off of this item one way or the other. So, my personal recommendation, once again, is to proceed with this because it will allow us to acquire high-opportunity open space through a reasonably valued way, and that none of this is guaranteed and is totally dependent upon how the application comes forward in terms of the residential areas. So that's my perspective. So, Trustee Skumatz, I see a hand.
Do you want, is it timely for a motion?
It's timely for a motion.
I'd like to move Town of Superior Resolution Number R-27, Series 2009, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a purchase and sale agreement with Charles Ochsner for certain property as open space.
Motion by Trustee Skumatz. Is there a second? By Trustee Gagaris. Further discussion about this issue? Phyllis.
Phyllis has further discussion.
Well, Phyllis, you could discuss it as well.
Okay.
Mostly looking forward to the roll call.
Okay, Cirelli?
Yes.
D'Souza?
Yes.
Gregorez?
Yes.
Buckle?
Yes.
Rosenfeld?
Yes.
Skumatz?
Yes.
Williams?
With much trepidation, yes, for now.
Do I have the right thing?
For now.
That's one word.
Is that a yes or no?
It's a yes. I
believe
said
that
there was a yes in there.
So, thank you very much. Motion carries. So, once again, much more to come in front of us in terms of this residential project. So, please stay tuned, and I'm sure that you all will.
Please get involved.
Let's see. I believe we're done with the consent agenda now. We're running slightly behind schedule, so let's move on to reports, questions, and issues. Trustee Cirelli.
I have no reports. I would like to just comment as an issue on something directed against the town manager earlier tonight, and how nothing's moot and he will always introduce things to change our vote if he didn't like it. That is absolutely the farthest thing from the truth. I don't care. It could be what the perception is out there, but the three particular instances in which votes got reconsidered were the initiation of the reconsideration was by board members, not by the town manager. That's just fact. The town manager only works for us to implement what we ask him to do. I know a lot of times he catches grief, and I think that to a large extent it's unfair. And, that I just feel like I have to comment on that. So, that's all.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Trustee Rosenfeld.
Ditto, and I don't have anything else to add.
Thank you. Trustee Skumatz.
Yes, I have several. It's been a long time since we've had a meeting, and I did attend several meetings, which I will make comments on very briefly. I attended the Climate Smart workshop that we had here in Superior, and because I wanted to see how well it was going to run, it's the one that was about 1A and getting your house updated and having the bills paid over the potentially long-term on your property tax, as opposed to having to worry about, I might move in 3 years, so that will never pay back in that 3 years. It was a really well-run workshop. I thought it was out the door, and they had to, because you had to attend the workshop in order to apply, I think there was a attendance sort of late cutoff thing. And it was really successful. I've been asking today for the update on how many dollars came from Superior for that, but I couldn't get it. But Boulder County on the whole applied for $9.5 million worth of improvements, and that's $9.5 million worth of energy efficiency stuff that a good chunk of the vast majority of that probably wouldn't have happened, especially since about $3.7 million of it is solar, which has a relatively long payback. So I think it's this 1A, this funding, this climate smart funding, is something that this is the first in the country that's gone this far and it's moved forward so quickly. So I think real kudos to the county, to Boulder County, and to our citizens for applying for good chunks of that money. I think it's going to pay them back in the short run and the long run. I couldn't attend a consortium of cities meeting, but Trustee Williams went in my stead, so she'll be talking about that. We had a meeting from the next one was I had a meeting with the head of the Colorado Municipal League, and there are a few stimulus items that may be coming up, and I'll pass those along to town. We also had a Recycling Conservation Advisory Committee meeting, and in that meeting a couple of things came up that I think that affect citizens, and also that was alluded to earlier today, early in this meeting. So one of the things that the committee is hoping to see move forward is as part of what's the first one? Arbor Day, and then potentially also as part of Superior Days, what our plan is to have compost delivered that was made out of the yard waste that our citizens basically delivered, have that put in a pile at one of two locations. We're not exactly certain which location, most likely near the yard waste facility, and allow citizens to come and take some of that yard waste for free, use it to start their plantings for the season. So watch for that. You'll see it. We'll be advertising that also via email, and so word of mouth, etc. We're looking for, we're not talking about landscaper levels, but we're talking about individual household levels of locally generated compost to try to close the loop. One of the other things that we were going to be we're trying to move forward with both the green plan that the town is looking at, which is coming forward, green purchasing, and this. The Sierra Club we heard an interesting presentation by the Sierra Club about a neighborhood energy training audit, sort of viral sort of thing that we're going to be bringing before the board as well. And the last thing that we recommended was something I heard mentioned earlier, which was looking at as part of that green plan for the city, talking about in new areas of town, looking at xeriscaping as one of the possible ways for new plantings, new growth, as opposed to always the water-intensive items.
So that electricity, energy savings, will they come and talk to my kids about turning lights off? Is that the type of things?
Yes. Your children would probably be a perfect group. I talked, as one of our jobs on the board is also to be liaison to various committees, and one of the committees I'm meant to be a liaison with is the Historic Committee. And the Historic Committee, I did make a call to Mr. Dorsey, but we haven't connected yet. But I wanted to mention something that I actually found out about first through the Boulder paper, and that is that on April 23rd, they're having a really cool-sounding presentation where somebody's going to act as a historic figure from the town, talk about the history of the mines and so on. And it's going to be right here in Town Hall, and I think it sounds like a really interesting presentation. And is someone here that can tell me what time that was? Oh, I think it's in the evening.
It's in
Isn't
the minutes of their meeting.
Oh, yeah. And I think I put it on my calendar, actually, so maybe it's there.
Might be in their minutes.
23rd. 6. I don't know. Anyway, I can't remember. It's April 23rd, though. I don't have the time written down. In any case, it sounded like a very interesting presentation. I'd encourage us to go. And
7 p.m.
7, thank you. 7 p.m. And then I had a couple of questions, but the most important one is, there was a question raised about snow plowing, and one of the things that we had asked when the snow plow contract was approved was to make sure we had some performance indicators, and I just want to make sure we're collecting that data. So.
They had less snow.
Thanks.
Let's see. I think the only meeting I attended was with Rocky Flats Stewardship Council. The brief summary from that is that all the remediation seems to be working appropriately, and they're fixing some dams or whatever, but there hasn't been any release off-site, so that's pretty exciting for all of us who have lived in this area since Rocky Flats was building triggers for bombs and now is open space, so that's pretty awesome. We ratified a letter to the NRD Damage Fund trustees in terms of open space purchases. The Stewardship Council approved that. And then we had a meeting with Senator Udall about the Charlie Wolf Act, which is basically to compensate energy workers that worked during the Cold War and were exposed to radioactive materials and suffered consequences of illness. And the Stewardship Council has always been in favor of that. It has been driving that project, and that bill is actually is now under discussion in Congress, so hopefully that will move forward. So it's pretty exciting stuff. That's all I had. Trustee D'Souza.
So I have several issues that I wanted to bring up, but I did attend the Dr. meeting, and whereas before the US 36 Q-jump had gotten passed over, we did recommend to CDOT that that be one of the top priorities to get that in there. So
for the other half?
For their remaining funds.
For the remaining.
Yeah, the
okay.
federal
So
funds.
what part of 36? The what?
So they have they're the Q-jumps, so those lanes that basically the buses get to bypass the wait on and off ramps.
Westbound line or?
I don't know, actually. I think that
They're going in both directions. Yeah. They're going in both directions, but they only approved half of it.
Yeah.
I think it's the westbound direction.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, but that was approved, and that was one of the things that, with the federal stimulus package, that they didn't get in those initial funds, but when those funds clear the way basically for the money that was already allocated for certain things, then they use that money for other projects. And so this was one of the projects that the Dr. Cog board did recommend CDOT, and they didn't think that it was going to be any problem with CDOT, but I do need to follow up just on CDOT's meeting for that one. And open space meeting, and there were some questions brought up on one of the issues that we're going to talk about tonight. I don't know if you were going to bring that up, Deb, about the Verhey property and open space funds being used, but since that's, I guess I'll wait since we're going to bring that up. Somebody made a comment about the community garden being dead. Is that, I haven't heard that it's completely dead, so I was just wanting to make sure that I didn't miss out on that. Is that something we're still discussing, correct?
Yes, I think the comment was, we used to have one and we don't today.
Oh, okay. Just, I misunderstood that then, but I just want to let people know then that that is something that we are looking into still then, because that's a priority. Okay, that's good to know. And then one of the questions I had, and even though Richmond has pulled out of this, the IGA, there were still some questions. I know I spoke with you about the IGA with the town and BBSD, and when that ends, and that when it ends, basically the IGA is done, and then that property reverts to the town. However, there has been some consistently people have been saying that that's not true and that we're not reading it. And I just want to get that cleared up completely as to what happens to that property 2011, 2014, when that ends, exactly.
January 1, 15, yes.
Okay, so exactly what are the limitations, or if there's any limitations on that property, I would really like to make sure that there's nothing in there that says, or just make sure there's no other loopholes in there that say that it has to be used for specific purposes. So, only because it's been brought up again saying that our information is not correct, and so I really want to make sure we have correct information on that. So,
I'll direct
probably
we'll have a brief summary of where that is. My understanding, after reading these documents inside and out, is that the there's an IGA, so there's an agreement with the town and Richmond Homes. There's an agreement, there's an IGA between the school district and the town. The IGA expires in 2014. It doesn't really, at least in my mind, unless the attorney has some other thought, I don't think it speaks to what happens after 2014. The IGA goes away, but then the restrictions, what happens is not really spoken to after that point. So Richmond still owns the property at that time until the town requests that we take the property. But I don't think it's very well. I think it was it wasn't thought out in advance about what, I think everybody thought the school district would take it in 2014, and now that they're not, it's not very well, at least in my mind, spoken to about what's going to happen then.
I'll look at it again, but that's my recollection. It's been a couple months since I looked at it.
That would be helpful.
Clearly, there's nothing in the IGA. The IGA between the town and the school district,
Right.
and everything contained within expires December 31st, 2014.
Right.
So then, at that point, you have your original agreement between the town and Richmond.
Okay.
And that agreement says the town can take the parcel at any time it chooses with 30 days' notice.
With no restrictions.
And in the meantime, they continue to own it, they continue to pay tax on it, and it's their responsibility to maintain it, which is why the town hasn't triggered it to date. Everything regarding its use, regarding the prospective use of that site, was established in the IGA.
Okay. Well, if our town attorney could just
take another
review that,
look.
I'd appreciate knowing exactly. Thank you. Thanks for filling me in. I just want to make sure that it's really, really clear for me. So that was it.
That could be helpful.
Results be published somewhere in the newsletter or an email or somewhere? Get it out.
It's so technically it's attorney-client privilege because it would be coming from because everything that comes from our attorney is attorney-client privilege. The board can then discuss about how to release that, and it would be through multiple different avenues.
I think this is
Yeah,
reports.
not at the moment. So we have to get through this particular one. So
That was all.
Trustee Gregos.
I attended a ProStack meeting last month, and the community garden is alive and well, actually. We had a pretty good discussion, and it's going to come up again on Wednesday. The biggest concern or question is the location more than anything else. I think everybody feels very comfortable with moving forward with it. I also met with State Senator Gail Swartz. She had a bill in the Senate that, if you remember, we had discussed neighborhood electric vehicles a while back. So she sponsored a bill. It passed through the Senate, and after meeting with her, I went and testified actually before the House Transportation and Energy Committee. And there were other people from the public sector, private sector, and nonprofit as well, and that passed unanimous as well. So now it's going back to the finalizing. And then Senator Dan Gibbs also co-sponsored that as well. So there's some changes. For example, in the past, their biggest concern was 35 miles per hour. That kind of limits. You're basically driving around Rock Creek. But now with this new bill, the way the language is stated is that you can cross major thoroughfares to get your destination. So it kind of expands its use. So, we'll see. It has a couple more meetings between Senate and House, but they're pretty close to passing it. I think it's a very popular bill.
How would that change use of electric vehicles within town? Because we talked about the restrictions that you couldn't travel down Marshall.
You couldn't marshal anything above 35, but you can cross, let's say,
McCaslin,
you can cross McCaslin.
if you were to go into the keeping, things like that.
The key would be how do we get those cars to Superior Marketplace, for example? And yes, you can go to Safeway, you can go to Starbucks across Colton, you can do those things. But so I'm not sure about the details with that.
Takes the town center development.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Takes the town center development and the interconnection
Yes.
of those.
But then they still wouldn't be able to travel down Marshall, right?
They wouldn't need
They
to.
can go.
I mean, it's any change is good in this front, but
If the town center gets developed and you can drive through the town center, then cross McCaslin to go to Marshall, to go to this Superior Marketplace, it can happen. So anyway, it's moving forward.
Yeah.
That's good. Thanks for doing it. Awesome.
You bet.
yeah.
Trustee Williams.
I attended a Consortium of Cities meeting April 1st, and in place of Lisa, or Trustee Skumatz, and we discussed the group's future projects and goals that we had all voted upon in different areas. But with further discussion, we all determined that they were too vague to move forward on. And so we are moving forward on each one individually and getting solicitations from every municipality and every city as far as what details they want in a specific category. For example, combining services to reduce cost of government. That's pretty vague. I could say we could combine rec centers of all of Boulder County, and everybody could go to any rec center they wanted. They pay for one, and they belong to all. I don't know. That's an example. So we've taken on the task to kind of reduce and be more detail-oriented in each category. And then we also discussed the revenue stability, revenue sharing that we all went to. And there was no real solution and no real next steps to continue. We did discuss arranging meetings with each town or city to encourage further discussions and facilitate future ideas. But that kind of failed a little bit there, so I'm sure you'll be talking about that next time. And lastly, I just want everyone to know that I'm not going to be able to make the next town board meeting, April 27th. I'll be out of town visiting family, so I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you. Trustee Gregorius?
Yeah. I have a dilemma, actually. On the 27th, I've been invited to a function to meet Governor Ritter, actually. And my question is are there issues that we need to, I'm only going to get like 5 or 10 minutes with him if I go, so it's not like,
He was on my plane last week.
What's that?
He was on my plane
Oh,
last
yeah?
week.
Well, I've never met him, but this is it's an opportunity. So my conflict is we have a town board meeting at 7 o'clock. That's when this function is. Is there any benefit that, and well, we don't have to decide this tonight. I'm just putting it out there if you guys can think of anything that could be.
Yeah, just, we'll see if there's obviously we'd like to have a quorum if that's going to be an issue, so we need to confirm that would be the case. But I think actually connecting with state, local, federal government officials is always very helpful, just to have some face time. And if you want a particular issue that affects the town, it would be transportation issues.
It's a unique opportunity. I don't know if I'm going to get this chance again, so I feel like I'm going to jump at it. But
yeah, actually, just a quick comment. I'm going to be out of town celebrating my 5th anniversary on the 27th. So
Phyllis will poll the board to make sure that we have a quorum.
Hopefully people don't mind me celebrating my 5th anniversary.
That's actually what I'm doing, my 15th.
15th,
Yeah.
there you go, yeah.
And grandpa get the kids.
Oh, cool.
Okay. So we might have an issue with
We just need to make sure we have a quorum.
How about our own zip code? Maybe he has a little pull on that.
I mean, seriously, if there's some issues that we can, again, my time will be limited, but it might be worth it.
You could connect with town staff. We're interested in, so transportation issues and urban renewal might be an issue. So I'm not sure how far that bill will be at that time, but I don't know. So,
can you actually bring that up, just so people watching and listening? I was going to ask about that and forgot, but maybe you can just bring up the status of that bill.
I don't know the status of the
representative.
I shared information with the board late this afternoon that we'd received from the Municipal League regarding the status of, don't hold me, I believe it's House Bill 1362. It pertains to regulating urban renewal authorities. And as we discussed earlier, it's the Superior Urban Renewal Authority that was the financing arm that promoted the creation of Superior Marketplace in Superior. The proposed legislation, which was submitted by a relatively newly elected representative out of Boulder, would significantly limit the use of urban renewal authorities and tax increment financing, one of the economic development tools within urban renewal authorities, in the future. Understand that it's going to be up for a House vote on Wednesday. The town's position has been, I think, very clearly communicated to Representative Primavera, that the board was opposed to that legislation and the restrictions that were being called for. We heard today that there was an amendment being introduced that would have negated most of the things that we found to be objectionable. It would have still required that there be notification and conversation with all the other taxing bodies, but it would have taken out some of the more onerous, like after 5 years you have to start sharing half of the revenue being received. And some of the other elements that we found to be most distasteful. So, first of all, the Municipal League's status was, or progress was, we're going to promote and endorse the amendment. If it gets approved, then it becomes a non-issue, and we might even be able to support the bill. But in its current state, we vehemently oppose it. I'm not aware of any municipalities that have supported it. And again, we've communicated that based on the guidance of the board to our area legislators.
I think you have the floor now. So
very briefly, we've had five weeks. So during this time, we generally like to review the next agenda as well as the digest. The agenda, I think, is pretty self-explanatory, and I don't see anything on there extraordinarily controversial, though I do look forward to the discussions at the workshop session, most significantly about the energy self-sufficiency plan. A couple of items from your recent digests. The Planning Commission, at the board's request, did conduct a meeting last Tuesday night regarding the roundabout, the design and implications of the roundabout at Colton and McCaslin. While there was no formal vote taken, as the planning commissioners were being polled, there was general support for both the concept and the extent of the improvements. There were some other suggestions, and I think it comes out fully in the meeting minutes that you've already received. Did have a meeting late last week with Resolute Investments, and do expect that they will be coming forward with the first of the 4 items that they'd asked the board for consideration, and that is the rezoning of the property from community activity to regional activity centers, which would allow greater density, greater massing, and higher building heights. And we're again talking about the 15-acre commercial development between Tyler and Flatirons Mall on the north side of Colton. Another reminder that our yard waste facility down on Rock Creek Parkway does open this Wednesday. It'll be open every Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday, starting April 15th through November 1st. We are changing the staffing of it this year from a contract to an in-house or a part-time town employee. But again, the yard waste facility does open and will begin accepting landscape waste and yard debris on Wednesday. The board is scheduled to have a joint meeting with the City of Louisville next Monday. We've given you a tentative agenda. Hadn't gotten any feedback on that proposed agenda. But the first item will be to celebrate the library services agreement that they approved last Tuesday night and that you approved earlier this evening. As a tangent of that, Louisville has sent direct mailers to all of our residents, or at least all of our library card holders, and is inviting the entire community to an open house at their library in recognition of National Library Week this Saturday. And I believe 1 or 2 of you have been recruited to actually be reading some Dr. Seuss to some of the younger library patrons. That's all I had.
Just a quick question about Resolute, since you brought it up.
Yes.
So I think part of that discussion was also about general financing tools for infrastructure. I mean, they brought up metropolitan districts, but there obviously are other possibilities that might help expedite that process. Is that on your agenda for Mr. Nilles or somebody to go over that?
One of the things that was clear was that the board needed a primer, if you will, a 101 on how metro districts and metro district financing works. And we certainly plan on having that. My conversations with them was, one, let's get the zoning taken care of. Okay. They wanted to see linkage between zoning and financing assistance. I said, I thought, from my perspective, financial participation within the project, whether it's the creation of the district, donation, or the sale of the director's parcel, which is contiguous to their parcel, all of that would be appropriate to have at the time that we saw a preliminary development plan. Okay. It would be premature to be talking about Are we going to provide financial support for this project when we don't know what we have? Is it an office? Is it an office with a hotel? Is it an office with multiple hotels? Is there or isn't there retail? I said that was the time in which to talk about financing, including district, and that we'll schedule a primer once we know that project is coming through the pipeline.
Okay, great,
And
thanks.
for those wondering, this is the property across the street from Flatirons Mall, right?
Directly west of the theater, directly south of Horizons apartment complex, and bordered between the apartment complex and the lake. Across from, I think it's Sonic and Big O Tire.
Okay, thanks. Ms. Carberry, anything from you?
Nothing for me, thanks.
Oh,
I would
thank you, yes,
suggest,
sorry.
with the boards, that because we have people in the audience and others that have stormed out, that you might consider agenda item number 9 before 8.
9 before 8, that's fine with me. I mean, I don't care. Well, we'll just leave it with the agenda. I think it's appropriate. So, nothing from the attorney. Ms. Harden, anything from you? Okay, thank you very much. With that, let's move to item number 8, consideration of an action on a banner permit request from the Rock Creek Ranch Homeowners Association. Mr. Randall.
Very briefly, and we heard some conversations about it earlier this evening, but it was the board's guidance that this was a matter that was to have been brought before the board at the time that the board dealt with our annual service agreement. Staff originally received that draft service agreement back in January. The first question I asked at the time was banners. The response was they haven't asked for any. The night that it was being considered by the board, I believe at your first or second meeting in February, was the first indication that we had from the audience that we were supposed to talk about banners, and the board's guidance was get us a request. You've got the request in front of you. Requesting, I believe there were 6 different banners, one of which has already been, the time had passed since the time, from the time that we'd received the inquiry, and the rest of the pertinent information. So ask the board what your suggestion or guidance is on how you'd like to proceed. We've given you various alternatives. We can do it. We can do it in-house. We can try to do it through our cooperation that we've traditionally received from Rocky Mountain Fire Protection District. We can say no, wait for the message board, which was one of the things that was driving the message board discussion that you looked at within the course of the last month. And we've also included the information about the costs associated to the town if we choose to assume the responsibility to install and remove.
So just a quick question, if I could. When are you, I know that we haven't finalized anything, but the message board, kind of the time frame of that?
Because that would resolve a lot.
That would resolve everything, I think.
We received some guidance. I don't have a clue in terms of how long it will take to construct, install the message board. But the board had given us guidance about the design. That's currently been referred back to the installation community, and I believe we're in the process of soliciting prices. But if that were to be on your next agenda, and I don't have a date on when we will have prices, but if it were to be on the next agenda, I would expect at that point to be able to say they expect it to take 60 days, 90 days to construct. Using an example, we had about almost a 90-day turnaround time from the time we approved the bids for the entrance monument sign at McCaslin at the interchange until it was installed. So I'm guessing it's probably going to have a similar turnaround time. So if we got guidance or approval to proceed on May 1st, it might be in place by August 1st.
Okay.
But it's strictly a swag.
Sure. Okay. Thanks. Comments from the board?
So I guess the timing would, if we were to get a message board by August, it would cover a couple of the events.
One event.
Which one, the Oktoberfest? Yeah. I mean, for the future, to me, that's the ideal solution, is to have a message board, because it doesn't only meet the needs of the HOA in the town, but it meets the needs of the Mustangs and lacrosse and everybody else, which that's the ideal. So just for this summer and for the events that are coming up in the next, I guess that's what we're talking about here. So this is not a long-term, it's just a short-term.
I just have some questions in terms of the impacts of the fire district. So do we have for the last few years, how many banners was the fire district able to help out with versus town staff?
The town asks for 4.
Right.
And we schedule those at the beginning of the year when we know what our special events are going to be, which are held, rain or shine, and the like. I believe there has been one other request that did not come through the town. We ultimately signed the permit, but the request went directly to the Fire Protection District. That was last year, and I believe it was Monarch Baseball, which was trying to get off the ground. They approached the fire department on their own and said, will you hang this for us? They called us and said, do you have any objection? I said, well, no, other than the fact that they just need to fill out the permit request, but they were going to do it. But the Fire Protection District dealt with that on the front end. We were only in terms of signing the permit.
Right, and you mentioned here, though, that it has become increasingly difficult to coordinate efforts with the fire district. So
we've had instances where we wanted to put one up, or take one down and put another one up, or we have one to be going up next week, and we'd like to get the one from yesterday's event or last week's event, down. And they're like, we can't get out there twice in the course of the next 7 days. Can we schedule it once? Take the old one down, put the new one up, and then the amount of time. The rig is out, the lift is out of service. You've seen the staffing estimates of what it's taken in the one instance where we did it.
So what equipment do we use if we have to go up there?
We rent a bucket truck.
Okay.
When was the last time we paid money to put a banner up?
If Mr. Hawkes is here or not. It was since John has been here. Our crews had done it once, and I'm guessing it was because Rocky Mountain was not available for that one particular. The rental was $185, both to put it up, another $185 to take it down. The amount of time was a little bit more labor-intensive on the front end to hang it than it was to remove it. It was a total, if I remember correctly, about 12 and a half staff hours.
And so has that been in the last 2 years we've done one?
John will have been here 2 years in July.
So, okay, so we paid for one.
Trustee Koukouris.
Well, I'm looking at, there are a couple of conflicts, obviously, with Chili Fest and 4th of July banner. I'm wondering if it would make any sense, since we have 3 movie nights, and those are very popular and they're open to the entire town, if we can have like one banner have all 3 dates of the movie nights, rather than putting it up and down, up and down, up and down 3 different times, just to do that. I mean,
I guess it's possible. The one thing that, like our message board, when we've rented it, as an example, when we're doing special snow plowing or special storm debris pickup, it's just human nature to be able to say, oh, there's that this weekend, and it's 5 weeks now, and it's 11 weeks from now. It loses some of its luster.
Well, but it would still go up and down because of the conflicts with Chili Fest and the 4th of July banner. Right. Maybe I misunderstood what you were proposing.
Yeah, I don't know if we could make it go up and down because we'd have other
No,
ones.
to avoid going up and down, just have it just once at the beginning of the summer, say these are the 3 dates.
Gotcha.
So rather than doing it 3 times, do it once, but it has all 3 dates. The banner itself has all 3 dates for the movie nights. I mean, I just
don't know how effective it would be. It would certainly minimize some of the conflicts and or some of the costs associated with it.
I think that's a question back to the HOA.
But it would, I think, would minimize some of its effectiveness.
Ultimately,
there's still going to be advertisement for the other 2 movie nights later on in the summer. So So it's not like there's going to be. I don't know. I'm just trying to find a compromise.
This is what I suggest: is that pretty soon, the word "moot" has been used earlier in the evening. I hate to bring it up, but next year this will be moot, right? Because we'll put it on the message board.
Yes, this is just for this summer. So.
It's just for this summer. Surely we can find some way.
Did we approve the message board?
No, it's coming back.
Well,
if the
message board is approved.
So I guess I'm assuming the message board is coming back because I think it makes a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of sense, but
so
it's still things.
I shouldn't assume things. You're absolutely right. So I don't know.
It makes a lot of sense.
I think it'll work.
Okay.
So this is hopefully just for this year, and perhaps just for 2 events because maybe the message board would be here for the Oktoberfest. Surely there's some way that we can work this out. I have to believe that we can. In the spirit of cooperation, I'd say, yeah, let's do the 2 banners and split the costs, and I don't want to have the Fire Protection District involved in that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That seems, at least from my mind, seems fair.
A lot of stuff on them.
What's the third solution?
Sure. Yes.
It was just presented to me that there's a local vendor that has their own message board that is portable. If we could get permission from the town to pay for the fuel for that and park it in a safe place on McCaslin, it wouldn't involve the banner. It wouldn't involve the fire department, and we could use that until the message board was built. All we need is the town's approval to be able to park that powered sign until the message board's built, and it takes the whole banner issue out of the whole situation.
So if that's a direction so let me see, so the dates that we're looking at here, sorry.
And I'm sorry, you said the town pay for the gas?
No, by the way, just so you know the history of this, not only is the HOA offered to pay money for this, we've offered to make a donation to the Fireman's Fund for retirement or injuries. That is a well-known fact by this town. If it hasn't been presented to you, I apologize, but that message was sent last year. Okay? Joe, this proposal, the reason that it's so infuriating is because not a week ago, the mayor said, you know what, there's something we can work through, and all these issues were brought up in the last meeting.
And we're talking about
But the point is, this is brought back up by the town manager, not a trustee. Do you understand the frustration of this? It's because of the way that things are written. It is geared towards adding fuel to a fire between the HOA and the town that should have been doused years ago. And I have tried since I've been on this HOA to talk to you about ending this. It is a constant bitter rivalry between the two of us.
Do you feel that that's the case tonight? Because I feel like we are trying to
I think that we're making
never
some
said
improvements
anything
without question. There is no question we're making improvements, but then why, Mayor, when you give the town manager instruction that we work through this, we discuss these points, does he put it back in writing with his final comment on the back page, I move to deny the ban of permit application?
Well, obviously, we can't approve everything when we have conflicts, and so if we were to approve your request the way you put it in, then the town would have to not advertise the 4th of July or the Chili Fest. And I think, so if we were to do it just how you've requested it, that would be a conflict. So I think it's appropriate that we discuss it.
Absolutely fair, but Dana, that should come from you, not the town manager. The town manager is an employee. It should come from one of these trustees. It shouldn't be a proposal proposed by the town manager on issues that were discussed in a meeting previous to this. And the mayor, point blank, Joe, you were here, point blank said to him, this is something we're going to work through. These issues are not real issues. The point's kind of moot because I think we're going to move ahead with this, I think was your comment. And by the way, I left here to go review the information on that meeting. And that's exactly what was said.
Can we discuss it?
I think that's where we're...
So the opportunity is...
So I have
bring
to
up
just
the plan.
clarify that surprisingly enough, the mayor actually doesn't run the town. You know, we rely upon staff to give us information that we make recommendations about. So I'd love to say that I was the czar of Superior and I was making all these directions to staff, but that's actually not how town government works.
But see, now you've blown my whole image, Mayor. I thought you were...
I know, exactly. So that's what my... Well, I won't go there. So I think, once again, I think we can find this out. I think we can find some reasonable common ground here, and I believe that that's what we're trying to do
How
at the
about
moment.
not just on this issue, but between the town and the HOA? Look, folks, I've only got 5-6 more months in the HOA. I'm not running again. I would love to leave this at a point where this town and the HOA goes into the hands of the new generation without this kind of conflict on anything. We should sit down and talk and work through this and get it done. If it's the one thing I can accomplish before I leave, it's all I want to accomplish.
I agree, Steve.
Thank
But
you.
it does cut both ways. I think we have to remember
I'll take care of that issue that you have there, okay?
Well, it's not my issue. I'm just saying it cuts both ways.
Well, I know there's
So-
some personal history there. We'll take care of those issues if we just sit down and talk about this.
Trustee Skumatz.
The question I have about this is that the HOA is the specific, but there are apparently other requesters as well. And so I don't know how we address that. I don't think we made a policy. We just said we'd work it out with the HOA. Well, I don't understand how we're going to address the other potential requesters.
I think Steve's solution, if there's a vendor that we can
yeah.
pay for to have the message, a temporary message board, that solves the issue. Forget about the banner.
Well, yeah, so I think that's a great comment, and the question I have then is, what does it take for us to approve that portable sign in a road?
Is that a permit?
And usually it's like sitting right out here, kind of right, at the end of the
in the merge lane.
Yeah.
Right. That's where we
That merge
traditionally
lane,
installed.
so-
If we're talking about the same message.
Yeah, and I'm assuming this is the same sign that the town has rented in the past from
Numerous
Superior
times.
Maintenance, I
Oh,
assume.
there we go.
Right?
Do you know who it is, Steve?
Yeah, George came forth and offered.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
you did.
that's the
Okay, so it
town.
is the
I think that's a
same,
sign we've rented in the past from Superior Maintenance for different things, right?
So how do we approve that?
So what would be the process if we decided to go down that route?
I've got the authority to approve the permit, to place that in the right-of-way, which is what we've done most recently, again, during the summer storm damage, I believe, of 2007. Was the last time that we rented that for that particular purpose.
You'd be talking about approving something more than what we normally approve approved, but
I believe you
I
did
fully
it.
support doing that, and I'm just, on your question, Lisa, regarding the larger policy, I don't know that we can address that tonight.
Yeah,
That's really hard.
But let's
But
resolve
we
this.
have
If
recognized
so-and-so wants
that
to run a
the,
race, or, how do we decide where?
well, we can always approve temporary signs.
Yeah.
Still permit issue.
So I don't want to get lost in the forest because of the trees. So I think that we can probably solve this one, move forward. I don't care if it's the banner and we split the costs, or the manager and the HOA can work out in the right-of-way. It doesn't make any difference to me. We're talking about 2 events.
Well, no, if the message board comes on, we're talking about 5 events.
Right, wait.
Portable message
6
board
events.
makes this
Well, I don't
request
know.
disappear.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about 5 events for
Yeah,
the summer.
they get 5 events
Yeah.
with the message board, 2 events with the banner, because others would conflict with.
Forget the banner. I think the message board makes more sense. It's
Just a
easier.
special
Right, but that hasn't been
dispensation till the
approved,
message
so
board
I know, but
is built.
I know.
If
Okay,
it's gonna
mine
be
come up
built in
again.
90 days, and that won't
Seems
be-
reasonable so long as it's safe.
Thank you.
So
That's a great idea.
I feel the same way.
we can either have a board vote on this, or we can have staff direction to work on whatever would be needed. And if the board needs to approve that in the future, then I don't think that we do, but that can come forward.
By the way, I'd like to publicly apologize to you for getting angry. It's not my intent to be angry with you guys, okay? I know you, a lot of you personally in the community, you're wonderful people. It's unfortunate that when you're part of the HOA, it comes in conflict with a lot of decisions you're making too. And we know that's just part of the nature of what happens, okay? It does get frustrating to time and time come in here and have a discussion where you think something is settled and then you find out later it's not. And that's the frustration I'm expressing.
I understand that.
So forgive me for getting upset. And it's hard to be man enough to apologize to you, but I am sorry for getting upset. It's not the way I like to handle it. So.
And I think that we, honestly, I mean, of course, I'm a simple guy, but I thought we were working okay with the HOA.
Yeah, I didn't
so-
think there was any conflict, so.
But, all right, well, sounds like this is,
Wow,
I'll work on it.
see it completely different. I mean, I think there's always been a rift. That's how I see it.
Well, I do too, and I think that maybe that's something we should discuss sometime offline, as you guys say.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
So we're voting this down, is that correct?
Well,
We're not voting
We're
on
not
it.
even voting it, so it's,
If you want
But-
to make a motion regarding
Otherwise,
the
I think that we
sign.
have,
no, we'll just go with the...
I just want
Actual
to
vote.
be clear, though, that is because I want to make sure that's the HOA position, that basically you're withdrawing this permit, and I want to make sure that this is cleared up before. So, I mean, you're confident that that's the solution that you want to pursue, is following that sign?
I am confident that the HOA would vote on this. We're just trying to get the recognition out to the community. It doesn't matter what it looks like at this point. And if the banners are a thing of the past, which it sounds like they're going to be anyway, it would be foolish of us to spend the HOA money on a bunch of banners.
Right.
That's not a good use of the funds.
However, that's not determined. That's something that the board is interested in, but we
Right.
haven't voted. That hasn't passed yet, so I don't want
Yeah,
to,
we don't want to,
don't make any
Yeah,
decisions
remember- yeah,
based
I
on
mean, this
something that
isn't
hasn't
on budget.
passed.
So am I allowed to withdraw the application contingent on the sign, the portable sign?
yeah, I mean, you have to come back with
You
it
can always
if
come
you,
back. and we'll
Certainly.
discuss it
before
then.
June 5th, if the portable sign isn't going to work.
There's no issue with the portable sign unless the vendor doesn't have it available or something like that. I think
That's
the
not
question
feasible.
here is, there's no guarantee we're going to have a message board by
Right.
August or
Next date.
October 1st of this
Right.
year, or even for 2010.
And if you
But it
choose
won't
not
matter
to use
if
that,
that
if you
board
choose
is
not to use that other
available.
message board, if somebody else comes forward asking for banners or something else, I'm just saying that you've put your request in now. I just want to make sure that you're not going to, you don't want to come back later, that that's your direction to use that other board.
Absolutely. Let me
Okay.
take it one step further, and obviously I can't speak for the whole board, but I would present to the board that we make a donation to your new sign for the town. In light of the fact that we're saving the $635 on this, we're obviously going to have to pay the vendor some money for the use of their sign. Not that they request that, they gave that out of good faith, but we wouldn't feel right about that. We'd want them to earn an income. But we could probably make some sort of donation towards that sign, knowing that we're going to be utilizing it in the future. And I think that our board and the way that they do things might support that. Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Trustee DeVoris.
Well, I guess there's still a couple, I don't know if tonight's the night, I know it's getting late, but how many days in advance do you put a temporary, 5 days, 7 days? Does it matter to you how many days the temporary message board is up?
Or what's standard, I guess.
Or, what are the parameters, I guess? I don't know.
It would depend on the event. As an example, frequently we've had for movie night, but probably 3 to 5 days in advance.
All right, is that good?
And we also recognize that we, particularly the outdoor events, are more susceptible to being changed because of weather.
That's true. That
It goes up on Monday,
cancellation.
it's planned to be a Friday night event, Friday doesn't happen, it's going to be the following Friday, it stays there for another week.
Yeah, that's actually better.
That's reasonable.
Because then when it's rained out or when
Yeah.
it's rained out.
I wouldn't want to see it installed on July 1st for an event on October.
No, I
I'm just saying, a reasonable period of time.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
I think 5 to 7 days is a reasonable period of time.
Okay.
Well, we have some things coming up in 2015 that we want to...
Very good. With that, let's move to item number 9, consideration of an action on Boulder County's request to use the Verhey residence. Mr. Randall, and thanks to the county representative for bearing with us.
Yes, I know Mr. Stewart's in the audience, Director of Parks and Open Space for Boulder County. As the staff report indicates, you're familiar with the history of the Verhey property, that Boulder County was the lead agency in the acquisition of that significant open space. The city of Boulder and the town of Superior played a minority role in it, roughly 25% of the original purchase price. The request before you is from Boulder County is they would like the permission of the town, and ultimately whether the city of Boulder has already granted it or is about to lease the existing homestead to an existing county employee. Number of motivations for doing it. One is to have eyes and ears in close proximity. There's probably some benefit associated from generating a modest revenue stream associated with it. We didn't see any issue or problem with it from a staff perspective and are recommending your favorable consideration. We did put in there a couple of conditions that we thought would be appropriate for the town. One, let's get the management plan that was called for originally when we bought it in 2007. Let's get that done. And if the town wants to say something about how the money that gets used, whether it gets used, because that was something that was missing from the original agreement, is it to be used to remove the pens? Is it to be used to maintain the structures? I know that there's been some representations that the barn was going to get painted this year. But on its face, we have no issue or no problem with the request and would encourage the board to consider it favorably.
Trustee Skumas.
I have a comment that's not directly on point, but it's on related point. And but I don't know if it's allowed, and it's something that maybe the attorney needs to figure out. So we've often heard, and it comes up from the board as well as from citizens, that we need some place that we could have people meet. We could have a meeting place, and it seems to me that the barn would be a particularly great place for that. It's big, it's in a great location, draws people to a place, open space that we purchased, all that sort of stuff gets people out there. I don't know what kind of renovations it might need. I don't know what that might cost. I've been in other communities where an old barn was made into theaters, made into meeting places, all that sort of stuff. I'd really like to see the staff and/or attorney to come back and let us know what that kind of a fairly simple, not a Cadillac version of this sort of thing might be. Not directly on point, but related.
Mr. Stewart, actually, I think I have some comments as well. So you have to come to the mic because we haven't seen you in a long time, and it's nice to see you.
Well, thank you. I'm Ron Stewart. I'm Director of Boulder County Parks and Open Space, and I'll just kind of give you a real brief description of why we're even here tonight. When the property was purchased, the county did put in half the money. The county became the owner of the fee simple interest in the property, and Superior and the City of Boulder each have a conservation easement on the property. We were given responsibility for managing and maintaining the property. And the Verheys, since 2007, the first year, the Verheys had a right to remain in the house and the improvements. So after the time that they moved out, we kind of looked at it and tried to decide what would be appropriate to do up there. We've done significant cleanup of the site already. We brought in roll-offs and taken off some of the junk that was there. We felt that the barn had use for agricultural purposes. Mr. Hogan, who will lease this property for grazing purposes, as well as who leases significant other land to the west of Superior that we own, wanted the barn to put hay in. In this part of the county, there aren't a lot of those kind of agricultural buildings left. So the initial purpose would be to put hay in it. The other buildings that remain up there are kind of little loafing sheds, which to a cattle operation, have some usefulness, so we intend to keep them. There are a few other buildings, including an outhouse that are kind of an unsightly outhouse that we have plans to remove from the property still. We've spent money doing that, cleaning up the property. We've spent money doing some fencing on the property that will allow cattle grazing. And then there's the question of the house. The house was built in 1987. It's about 3,000 square feet. At least portions of the house are in very good condition. So in terms of thinking about what we do with it, it didn't seem really appropriate for us to just go in and bulldoze something that seemed perfectly usable. So the idea of, well, then, would we do some sort of lease came up. Initially, it came up because Mr. Hogan thought he had a hired hand for his cattle operation who might want to lease the house and live there. We have a number of houses on open space throughout the county where we do lease it for agricultural purposes. That hired hand ended up renting another place because we weren't going to be able to move quickly enough for him to be able to take the lease. So then we thought about the idea of either having a sheriff's deputy, a county superior employee, another county employee who'd be able to lease the house, and there is a county sheriff's deputy who's willing to do it. The conservation easement that you have on the property requires your approval for any use of the land that is other than sort of open land, agricultural uses, wildlife habitat, all of that. So this use, being something other than that, requires your approval, City of Boulder approval, and the county approval. And that's really what I'm here to talk to you about tonight. What you think about that, whether you're willing to see that happen. And then, well, that's it. I think we don't have a strong feeling that this has to happen. We didn't go into the purchase really thinking that this needed to happen, but kind of after being out there and looking at the house and thinking, oh, this is something that's perfectly usable, the question comes up, is it something you just bulldoze or just let sit there and become a target for vandals or something? So that's where we are, and here to see what you think about it. So.
Thoughts from the board. I did have one question for you. So in terms of how do you make this look like it's fair for everybody involved? I mean, how do you pick the person? And is that, I mean, this is just a one-year deal that we're talking about. So once again, I don't want to be lost in the forest because of the tree. But if this were to proceed 10 years down the road, how do you pick the person who might get this potentially sweetheart deal given the price of houses in the area?
Well, you can either put it out on the straight rental market, and the other thing I would say is that it's not a perfect house. I mean, there are features of it that make it not an ideal home. So whether or not there would be many people wanting to rent it or not, I really kind of doubt it. There might be some people who are willing to rent it. We've got property elsewhere in the county and these sorts of houses, and sometimes finding someone who will rent it is a bigger issue than deciding who among the many would we let rent it, that sort of thing. So we can either put it up, have just an advertisement in the paper and accept applications from people who would want to rent it, like you would kind of any rental property. Or sometimes what we do is put out a notice in the sheriff's office. When Sheriff Pelley first came in, and he knew that we had several of these houses around the county, it was his thought to see if sheriff's deputies would want to live in them, because sometimes a sheriff's car sitting there is a kind of a disincentive for certain kind of activities on a property. So a couple of the houses we have are leased to sheriff's deputies. Some are where there's no interest by anybody, sheriff's deputy. We also have a number of properties where we actually have a caretaker on the property, and the caretakers are responsible for more of the patrolling and maintenance of the property, but those tend to be on our bigger properties like Highland Hall and Caribou and that sort of thing.
So if this were to proceed in the future, obviously that would be in your bailiwick and whatever you think would be fair to county residents. So
right.
I guess I would just throw that out there as something to have to consider. Thoughts from the board? Trustee Rosenfeld?
Your hand was up.
So I don't have a, I guess, issue per se with somebody on the property, but as far as someone, as to whom it would be rented to, I would prefer to have someone that does have an interest in the property, or, either with an open space employee, or, as you said, a caretaker, a sheriff. I think something that would in some way benefit that property. I did have a question, and maybe this is for our attorney. Since we did purchase our 25% with our open space funds, are there anything in those funds that would preclude us from agreeing to this?
I don't know the answer to that. We'd have to actually check with them.
That would be something that I would like to know before we make any type of an agreement. I guess those. And I would love to see something, again, if our open space bond money allowed that with the barn, I think we're never, we could always use meeting space, but again, whether or not that would be something that would be allowed, I don't know. Those are my thoughts.
Trustee Rosenfeld.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. It would be nice to get an update on kind of what the planned final end state is, at least over the next few years, for that property in terms of what will be removed, what will it look like. Just because, when we went into this, we talked about what it might look like, and of course, as minority stakeholders, we didn't have a whole lot to say, but we appreciated the deal overall. But it would be nice just to get an update at some point on kind of what the final end state will look like, what buildings are going to remain, what will be gone, what restoration will happen, those kinds of things. So I don't know if that's something that you'd be able to send us, or...
Sure, we can get you that. What I would say pretty simply is that most of what we would think should be gone is gone, except for the outhouse. Mm-hmm. And most of what
best for last.
most of what's out there, we would say should remain because it has some usefulness to an agricultural tenant who might be there. Now, on the other hand, if you thought that was a horrible idea, we're certainly going to be willing to listen to your point of view. And we don't consider you really a minority owner in this. I mean, I think we did a partnership here, and we try to do something that works for all of us. But if there is a building that has some value to a rancher, a farmer to store hay, to have their cattle come in out of the weather, it's the kind of thing that we in our program would say should probably be there. The outhouse shouldn't. So, it's...
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I think there's a lot of logic to that. I suspect some of our residents probably had an expectation that everything would be ripped up, torn off, completely restored, and it would just be another part of the land out there. So that's kind of why I was asking, just so we can have some information and communicate it to our. And if we do have major concerns, it would be nice, to know
we can
that,
get
so.
you a little site map of what's left and
That would help.
whether any of it we think should go. I would tell you that we plan to paint the barn so that it isn't. So that it blends better into the setting rather than as the red color that it is now, which kind of sticks out like a bit like a sore thumb. So we do plan to paint it. And I would also say about the use of the barn as a meeting space, that I would say that likely conflicts with what the county would define open space to be. But we can certainly, Trustee Skumatz, we can also look into that as well as you looking at that from the standpoint of what your resolution says and what uses you can have.
Trustee Williams.
I'm curious about some debris, if it's going to be taken away at all. It is kind of I think it was a threatened pig farm. It's right on McCaslin, you recall. And it has a lot of graffiti on it. Is that going to disappear?
I would guess we could get rid of that.
It's a big eyesore driving down McCaslin for anybody.
Okay.
Thanks.
I guess my comments, I think that the county's plan of using agricultural lands for agriculture seems to make sense, although the prairie dog population up there might limit the amount of grazing. But if you thought that was valuable land, that might make sense. I think that the one-year deal could get worked out, and this isn't going to be written in concrete. And if the parties don't seem like that's a good plan, then we can address that in a year. So, sounds like there's some legal issues that need to be cleared up and,
Yeah, I
or
took
perhaps they're clear now.
Well, I took a look and talked to town manager a bit. Apparently, we just use our open space funds. I didn't know if we used some county open space funds for this, but our open space, it's a little bit broad as long as it's being used for open space. So I actually like Trustee D'Souza's suggestion that somehow we tie this back to the property, so that the property only be rented to a sheriff's deputy who can provide some deterrent for on-site crime, or a caretaker or a county employee, or, you know, keep it back related to the use of the property as open space. And then I think we're fine under the use of it, the use of our open space funds. I wouldn't be comfortable just putting an ad in the paper and renting it to anyone.
I
think
agree.
We'd have a harder time. We could get there, but I think we'd have a harder time justifying that as open space use. So that would be my preference.
Bless you.
So, it sounds like there's some Ts to be crossed and Is to be dotted, but general heads up on that one, that seems to make sense. And I guess my only other comment, well, I had two comments. One, it was not sad to see that Mr. Mayers was on this, and he has recently, well, not recently, but was an important partner in that transaction, and it's sad to note that. And two, that it's nice to continue to partner with the county, because I think that we've had a long-standing cooperative agreement, and it's preserved a whole bunch of open space for a really long period of time. And appreciate your efforts for many, many years. So,
I have one quick question.
Trustee D'Souza.
Sorry, only that I've heard this several times now about the paint color of the barn, and I guess it kind of depends on what season, so I was just curious what color that's going to be.
Fuchsia.
Yeah, prairie dog.
It's a brownish sort of color, and we've used it on hay barns that we have built on other county open space. I could get you some addresses even if you'd like to see the color.
Just kind of curious. I didn't know whether it was green, yellow, brown.
An earth tone, a brownish earth tone sort of color.
Thanks.
Rock Creek beige.
So
hang on.
no bright blue.
Yeah, no white for winter. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Let's see. With that, I think that we're ending up our regular meeting. We have
Do we need a motion on that?
I think that,
or we have to
I
get
don't-
back on this.
I don't know if we need to make any particular action item. The answer is I don't know. Do you want a particular motion for this, or do you want to bring it back after all the contractual things have been dealt with?
Considering that they were looking to lease the property beginning May 1st, and your next meeting is April 27th, we were looking for endorsement of their use of that property. We're consenting to it for the next year to lease out the residential structure.
You can do it subject to the town attorney's approval of
Yeah,
the
can we
lease
do that?
agreement,
Okay.
and that way I can take a look.
So I'll
at
make a
this.
motion to approve the recommendation from the county substantially as attached with appropriate changes as indicated by the town's attorney.
And with the caveats, the stipulations.
Okay?
And
Motion by Trustee Muckle. By Trustee Schultz. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much.
As a comment.
Comment, yes.
And is there, are we willing to have the town investigate whether or not the barn can be used or not?
Just to investigate at least and see if it's a possibility.
To be used as some sort of a community meeting facility?
Sure, I think that, have a conversation, have staff have a conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's really, I guess my perspective, if we're going to actually use it as agricultural land and it has high value as an agricultural building, probably should be used for agriculture. So, I totally agree with it.
Ron and I will talk.
Talk amongst yourself.
We have trees if you want trees.
Oh,
Bargaining.
tree farm. Exactly.
Do you want to move
Maybe
the
we
building
do.
out this way?
So, thank you. All right, so we're ending up the regular meeting, and with that, we have one more thing, which is the executive session to consider the purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of real, personal, or other property pursuant to CRS 24-6-402, Print 4, Print A, to consider personnel matters pursuant to CRS 24-6-402, Print 4, Print F. Motion to go into executive session by Trustee Schoolmaster, second by Trustee D'Souza. Further discussion about that? All in favor? It's unanimous for an executive session. Thank you.